Is that legal?
I will make it legal.
Where do you get this bureaucratic bull?
You have all the character references of a politician.
Intelligence has nothing to do with politics.
This president is not above the law.
If the dirty air don't get you, the politicians will.
The last remnants of the old republic have been swept away.
These orders have forced us to declare independence.
Welcome to another edition of Grounds of Expediency Live. I am Tim. I am the culture war realist. I'm a rational individualist. I am the no-compromise anti-communist. I'm the hierarchy dominator. I cite history with validity. I've got the hot takes for the bot fakes. And most importantly, I'm never a victim. With the shield and the sword, we protect you from the horde. Thanks for being here, everyone. Share the channel and the stream out there. We want to grow this channel. We want to get to a couple hundred subs at least, so that when we go live, everyone will get a notification and we can build the channel. Because, guys, this is the trailblazing, trend-setting channel talking about what matters most in the past, present, and the future. And, guys, thanks for watching on replay. These streams are out there forever. Leave a like and a comment. Tell your friends. Tell them to go out there and watch this. If they can't see it live, they can drive along. Not a lot of stuff you really need to watch. You can listen to it. And most importantly, share the stream out there on all platforms. Discord, Twitter, Facebook groups, Reddit, wherever you can think of. Share it. Let's get some people up in here. We're going to talk about a lot of interesting stuff. We're going to talk about the current news. Biden's all over the news, and this really wasn't part of the plan until I checked the news earlier, but we're going to talk about that and more of evergreen topics. We're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about socialist insecurity, or as most people call it, social security, and how it's a sacred cow that no one is allowed to talk about ending. And we are also going to talk about cuckservatives. What does that even mean? What is conservative purity? Most of the people talking about this don't even know what conservatism really is. Libertarianism. They don't know what it means. So we're going to talk about that, guys. But I'm going to go ahead and bring on in my guest, more like my co-host. He's been on all the Grounds of Expediency streams. He is the procurator of justice, the medicine man of the tribe, the reality check technician. He is the grand high priest, Holy Order of the Jab, Greg. And no
audio's still broke.
Man,
I gotta fix that. You know, you don't change a single setting and then things just don't work.
Well, we're always bagging on people, you know, for having fucked up tech and stuff. And then the last two times your sound wasn't working on your.
Yeah, I keep forgetting. Like, I remember at the beginning of the stream, obviously, but then by the end of the stream, I forget about it. Just, oops.
Yeah, it sucks.
But I'm one of those people that are like, okay, if I haven't changed any settings whatsoever, why the hell is it different and not working when it worked before?
Right. I know, man. Like,
irritating.
What happens? What happens? I hadn't logged into StreamYard in weeks back in November, and everything was the same. It's like, all right, I'm good to go. Don't need to do anything. So
yeah, StreamYards really hasn't been changing a whole lot. I mean, they're tinkering more with trying to do the like conferencing crap instead of.
Yes.
That's what happens when companies kind of lose their core.
Their
core product or their purpose.
Mm-hmm.
They should be innovating more on the streaming side of things. That's where the bread and butter was. That's what made them what they are, and it's regrettable that they're kind of neglecting that.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, well. So we had Timon up in here pretty early saying, come on, oh mighty meteor. We know what's going on in his country. So I guess I can understand that sentiment. And we have our other longtime mod, Blake St. Clair, Liquid Blake, Dan Blackroyd, whatever you want to call him, up in the chat. Obviously, guys, based on the topics, based on the description of this stream, you know, for a very small channel, we're probably being hidden. So share the stream out there. Private messages, in groups. Just share it out there. Let's get some people up in here. We always have a great conversation. I've got some links pulled up. So, I really don't look at the news all day because just too busy at work. Have you been watching the news today or websites or whatever?
Not too in tune today. I know there's the headlines that they found more classified documents.
More, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oops. It's almost like it's kind of a normal thing for presidential libraries to have this kind of crap. And the whole original thing with President number 45 was a complete fucking nothing burger.
Mm-hmm.
Like oops. But it's amazing how quickly the narrative changes based on who's the target.
Yeah. Yep. We've got some stuff on that for sure. And then there's something else though. A couple of things. His Mexico visit, right? And then you've got this, and we can look at this in a bit. Biden has a plan B for student debt relief. Here's how it works. Plan B. That's an interesting term to use there.
I think the entire university system should be Plan B'd.
Yeah, me too. You know what his Plan B probably is? We're going to take all the debt and we're going to put it on a rocket and we're going to send it to the moon so it's not here anymore. That's the kind of idea you get out of that idiot's brain.
Mm. Well, whatever pays off the base.
Yes.
And that's the most important thing is to pay off those voters who, kind of saved his bacon in the midterms.
Exactly. So let's look at this first one here. I think this is interesting. It's a CNN one. Okay. So let's see how they're characterizing this versus everyone else. I've got a New York Times, I've got some Fox News, and different aspects of it. It's not just, hey, here's the information. So Biden's legal team, and this is a couple hours ago, 3 hours ago, 4 hours ago, whatever it is, Biden's legal team found another batch of classified documents in search of second location. Another batch of classified government records were found by President Joe Biden's legal team following the initial discovery of classified documents at his former think tank office in Washington this past fall. According to people briefed on the matter, the additional documents were found in a second location during searches that took place after lawyers found the initial classified documents. Well, duh. What a dumb turn of phrase. That effort led to the discovery of, and they spelled lead correctly. That's one of the most misspelled. Oh, I'm not. That's one of the most misspelled words. People will spell LED as LEAD. And it's in a lot of articles, and that is not the proper way to spell it. It's LED. Led to the discovery of additional documents of interest of federal officials reviewing the matter.
It's nuclear codes!
Exactly. NBC News first reported the new batch of classified documents. Okay, great. They gave credit. The discovery in his former office set off alarm bells inside the White House, where only a small circle of advisors and lawyers were aware of the matter. An effort was launched to search other locations where documents from Biden's time as vice president may have been stored. So yeah, that's the first clarification. It's when he was VP under Obama, right? Remember
it's a very important distinction because the president has complete 100% ability to on a whim at his own desire, without any formal procedure, to declassify whatever the hell he wants to declassify.
Mm-hmm.
The vice president does not have that power whatsoever. So in order to sidestep the legal issues, former President Obama would have to then declare that oh yeah, I declassified that. So it was okay for him to take it. Very, very different legal situation.
Yep.
For the vice president to have classified documents versus the president of the United States. to have classified documents because he can just say abracadabra declassified.
Yep.
So a very critical distinction. And another important distinction here is the timing. The initial batch was found before the midterm elections and is just being reported on now.
Yes, good point.
How many days later? You got all of November, all of December, into January. So like 2 months later, we're finding out about this.
Yeah.
If it was the other side.
Oh man.
I think it would have been leaked the day it happened.
Oh, you know what it would have been?
Just magically leaked.
You know what it would have been? It would have become known as January 10th. It would have been, now you have January 6th, never forget. Now you have January 10th, never forget when these terrible documents were declassified by Drumpf. That's what you'd be hearing. And another distinction to make is now that he is president, he cannot retroactively declassify them. So just understand.
Well, he can retroactively declassify them, but it wouldn't make it okay for him to take them 4 years ago or 8 years ago.
That's what I meant. Yes. Yeah. Yes. That wouldn't be retroactive. That would be declassifying them now.
Correct.
So that's not retroactive because you can't go back in time is my point. They were not declassified at the point he took them or whoever took them and put them in the
I suppose he could a president. I don't think a president's ever tried this, but can a president pardon himself? I don't think there's a constitutional.
Well, remember,
it wouldn't safeguard him from impeachment.
Remember when
impeachment is not a legal proceeding.
I think we talked about this on this very channel or this very stream. I think we talked about Trump would get himself convicted, right? Because you can't be double jeopardy, then pardon himself, and then the whole thing goes away. With all this shit they were throwing at him. Because that's the type of thing he would do. I think we speculated on that a couple of years ago, but it
doesn't safeguard you from the impeachment process, though. That's
or I remember me and my friends talking about Obama doing that to Hillary for all the emails and stuff. Go ahead.
I honestly thought that was going to happen, and I think it would have happened had they not known ahead of time that they were just never going to prosecute it anyway.
Right. Let's keep going here. Let me skip down to see. It is unclear at this time how many documents were in the second batch. It is also unclear where the new batch were located prior to new. Well, you know what? I've got to ask this right now. Why don't they raid the White House?
Yeah.
FBI versus Secret Service at the Taj Mahal. Make it happen. I mean, come on.
White House Down Part 2.
Yeah. Be like the Civil War. What's going on, Melissa and Timon? Thanks for being here. But yeah, this whole report, we'll keep going here, but it's significantly different than how it would have been if the other side had done this, had been caught in this predicament.
Exactly.
Well, look, they acknowledge this here. The documents were discovered on November 2nd, just 6 days before the midterm elections, but the president's attorneys only publicly acknowledged the discovery of the documents on Monday.
And just miraculously no leaks. The departments that have been leaky sieves for years upon years. Just nobody leaked it. Airtight. Suddenly, the Department of Justice is air fucking tight. Amazing coincidence.
It's crazy. The government materials were found while closing out a Washington, D.C. based office, the Penn Biden Center for Diplomacy and Global Engagement. The items discovered include 10 classified documents, including U.S. intelligence memos and briefing materials that covered topics including Ukraine, Iran, and United Kingdom, according to a source familiar with the matter. I got a question on this in a second. Biden said Tuesday that he did not know that some classified documents had been taken to his private office after he had left the vice presidency, and that his attorneys did what they should have done by immediately contacting the National Archives and Records Administration after the documents were found in November. The documents, the president said, were found in a box, locked cabinet, or at least a closet. Which is it? Which is it? You retard. A box, a locked cabinet, or a closet?
Probably all, because he said all three, they were probably in all three locations. That's my guess.
I just think he's a retard.
Well, that too. I mean, you listen to
at least a closet, because if you put something in a closet, like, what criminal mind can penetrate that fortress of security?
Right. The statement he did was read. Like, he didn't come out and just talk about it in like a press conference or ask a question about it. Like, it was a prepared statement by his attorneys.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, like, it was going to be, intentionally vague and, obviously, spun in the best possible way.
Yeah.
To put him in the best possible. Oh, I had no idea they were there. And, it's just an accident. Oopsie.
Yeah, and how do you teach Gen Zers that esports are not sports? That shouldn't have to be taught, Timon. That's just a fact of life.
Yeah, there can be. We have different words for different things for reasons.
Yeah,
esports, they're not sports. They're competitions, but not all competitions are sports. A spelling bee is not a sport, but it's a competition.
Mm-hmm.
Or a contest.
Right. Yeah, that's good job, Timon. You're right. Tattoos in the house. But here's the question I have on this, though. Like, under what circumstance would these documents regarding Ukraine, United Kingdom, and Iran be in this center? Like, if you're going to have something sensitive like that, why don't you go to the source? Why would they have been brought to that location? That's the question I'd be asking. What compelling reason would anyone have to take it there if you're the vice president or not? And then
because he's going to have his own library and legacy. And I mean, like, when it comes down to it, for me, like, I don't think either case is particularly like Trump's or Biden's or whatever. Like, I don't think it's that out of the realm. Like, I'm sure if you go raided Obama's library or George W. Bush's library or Bill Clinton's library, or hell, all the way down to the Carter library, you're going to find shit that shouldn't be there. Technically, not on public display, but in their archives and stuff that they took with them, because that's the nature of it. Like because the president has ultimate authority on what's classified and everything, they don't have really good procedures in place and processes in place to safeguard those things.
Right.
So, like, I believe it's plausible that those documents were just part of the normal, gathering for library, and not like an intentional, like, I'm stealing government secrets kind of thing. But then you have to afford Trump that same leeway.
Right. And it's not about, we thought someone was stealing something. It's
right.
More like, depending on what these are, because all it says in this article, and there is a link where it says the items discovered, is 10 classified documents regarding those three nations. We don't know what that means, at least from this, but the brazen lack of concern about taking something like that there, like, I don't know, like, was the intention to, like you said, to keep it as part of the center, or was it just, hey, he's working from there today, so he had some
documents with him that is careless.
Yeah. Careless is the word I'm looking for. So did he have someone run over there and get him that somehow had the clearance, and then, I'm done looking at those, I'm going to throw them into a box or a closet or whatever the hell he said, and then forgot about him? That's the concern I have about it. We don't know what is in the documents from this article. We can dig into that, but point is, Like, why were they
Will
taken
the press
there?
even do that though?
Will the FBI do that?
Yeah, that's yeah.
No.
Well, I mean, if the FBI did it and it was, a conservative or Republican in office, then obviously that information would then immediately be leaked to the press. But the interesting thing about it is that Biden's own statements regarding Trump's circumstances, like that should be played on loop over and over and over again in campaign commercials.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like funny to be like, oh, you're putting our agents and these FBI and CIA and NSA people, they're putting them at risk because there's information that could lead to uncovering their identity.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't buy that shit to begin with. But.
Yeah, the linked article doesn't provide any more information as to what the documents were exactly.
No, we still don't know exactly what the Trump documents were either.
Mm-hmm. We don't even know, I just read this. We don't even know where the second batch was. Was it at the same location, this Penn Biden Center? Hasn't been revealed yet. And this is a pretty fresh article from about 4 hours ago.
But it'll be treated just as like, oops.
Well, I would read the rest of this, but they're actually talking about this right here. Karine Jean-Pierre, CBS reporter, clash over Biden docs. You don't need to be contentious with me here, Ed. Ed O'Keefe grilled the White House about Biden's mishandling of classified documents. Let's see. White House Press Secretary KJP had a heated exchange with CBS News correspondent Ed O'Keefe. And this is a Fox News story.
You mean she was attacking the free press, being a threat to democracy?
Yeah, exactly.
Because anytime a Republican gets testy with a reporter, that's a threat on the free press. Democracy's dying in darkness and the world is going to end.
Mm-hmm. O'Keefe began his line of questions at Wednesday's White House press briefing by asking whether Jean-Pierre was aware of any conversations in the White House since early November when classified documents from Biden's time as VP were found at the Penn Biden Center about waiting to disclose to the public until this week. And she says, look, I understand you guys are going to have a lot of questions on this. I get that. I know you guys are going to have a lot of questions on process and specifics. And what I can tell you is that I'm not going to go beyond what the president laid out. I'm not going to go beyond what my White House counsel colleagues have stated. And that's counsel as in law advice. I would refer you to them for any other specifics or additional information. But you're the White House press secretary, you dumb bitch. I want to be prudent here. I want to make sure that we do this in the appropriate way. Just say no instead of telling them to go to the councils. Like, that's what your job is. Mm-hmm. Your job is to be the voice of the White House. You're not going to answer the questions, but we're going to ask them because that's our job, O'Keefe told the press secretary. I understand, and my job is to answer your question. So here we go. Let's go.
If you've ever
I don't
sat
like this
and
person
listened
at all.
Listen to her press conferences. She is she makes Jen Psaki look like a fucking saint.
Yeah.
Like she's Kamala Harris dumb.
Oh yeah. And that's pretty dumb.
And that's pretty dumb. And the thing is like, what's frustrating about it is that, these White House correspondents will have their little, tiffs with the White House press secretary. And of course, depending on who the administration is, like the characterization when it comes to when they go back to their publications or their news channels or whatever is just completely different, right? You have like you have Jim Acosta type people like fucking whining and crying on CNN about like how mean and horrible the Trump administration is and they're picking on me and everything like that. These people are just like, well, has a D in front of it, so we can't say too much.
Exactly.
We'll just put that they didn't answer the question, I guess.
Yeah.
We won't characterize them as being misleading or deceptive or hostile.
Mm-hmm.
But, again, shoe on the other foot, they definitely would.
Yeah. The CBS News reporter cited a comment Biden made in the early days of his presidency when he said, "I'm going to make mistakes. When I make them, I'll acknowledge them, and I'll tell you, and I'll need your help to help me correct them." So you're the one here talking to us about this. That's why we're asking you. That's the point I made earlier. That's your job, Medusa. Ed, we don't need to have this. We work very well together. Oh my gosh, that's so cringe. She's actually said that in front of hundreds of thousands, and millions of people. That,
buddy,
what are you
hey,
doing?
Ed,
You're with CBS. You're not supposed to do that.
We're on the same side, man. Come on.
Jeez.
Get in line, buddy.
That's just cringe. That's
tone embarrassing.
Deafness. Yes, it is.
For on a professional level for the reporter and, of course, the press secretary.
Mm-hmm. I saw you at the
work very
cocktail
well
party
together.
Thursday night.
Your relationship, the press corps' relationship with the press secretary should be 100% adversarial.
Never has
Always.
been, but it should
Always. It should be adversarial.
Mm-hmm.
For Republicans or Democrats and everything, they should not work well together or anything like that. Because her job is to lie, and your job is to call it out. If you're the press, her job is to fucking lie and spin on behalf of the president, not tell the truth. She can flat out lie. There's no law that says the press secretary can't just fucking lie right to your face. Not under oath when she's not like swearing an oath to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth when she does a press conference. And by the way, neither is the president when they do press conferences.
Right.
And they can absolutely flat out lie to you. And you should assume that they are. That's why the relationship should be adversarial always. And when the relationship between the press and the administration and the state isn't adversarial, then the press has no purpose. They become not the press, they become publicists.
Mm-hmm.
So this whole notion, democracy dies in darkness and all that other stuff and the First Amendment, like if there isn't going to be an adversarial relationship between the press and the administration, then there is no reason to have the free press.
Right.
And unfortunately, but we don't have a free press, or we don't have legitimate press.
Yeah, we have a self-censored press whenever there's a D in the White House. That's what we have.
Mm-hmm. We have an advocacy wing.
Mm-hmm. We don't need to have this kind of confrontation. Ask your question, and I will answer them the best I can. Part of the reason we're
dodging them.
Yeah, part of the reason we're laying that out is because you're laying out your part of the job. We're laying out our part of the job, which is asking questions. O'Keefe shot back. I know, but I'm just saying we don't need to have content. What the hell is? She sucks. Like if I'm the president and that's
embarrassing.
She's fired. That's just like an elementary school argument. I mean, we got Jonah Hill here, or whatever his name is. What's that? Is that his name? That one actor,
Yeah.
It's always He can play him in the that's got to be an SNL skit. If he's hosting SNL, and I hate SNL anymore, that has to be a skit.
I don't watch
they
SNL
would have done that
ever.
in the 90s or 80s, I guarantee. And Eddie Murphy would have played her. O'Keefe went on to grill Jean-Pierre about the timing of the disclosure, asking if it had anything to do with the fact the election was just a few days away. This guy, are you sure he's not going to get fired from CBS News? She responded by reiterating that this is under review by the DOJ. Okay. That's a non sequitur. But there was nothing stopping
Good question,
POTUS.
O'Keefe.
Yeah. but there was nothing stopping POTUS from disclosing the discovery of these classified documents in his former office before it was under Justice Department review. So why didn't he disclose it, O'Keefe asks. And she says, what I can tell you right now is that the president is how is she saying this? What I can tell you right now is what the president is share with you, what the president said to all of it. Man, she doesn't know how to talk, right? Which is he was surprised by this. They need to not transcribe exactly what she said and write down what she was actually trying to convey, because that doesn't make any sense. Try to read.
She's one of those people again. Like if you watch her press conferences, she tries to filibuster.
Yes.
To avoid a number of questions, and she will often go on these kind of weird circular tangents, very much like Kamala Harris. Although Kamala Harris, I think, is actually way dumber. But
oh yeah,
that's what they'll do is they just kind of talk.
She's
in
dumber, but she gets a good
and
hummer.
Make things like, oh, I like electric school buses.
Yeah.
But they'll just talk in circles to extend their time to filibuster, and they'll be like, "Well, we had a press conference; it was an hour long."
Well, I can tell right here she changed direction in her statement. What I can tell you right now is what the president is share with you, what the president said to all of you, right? Which is he was surprised by this. That's just not good articulation. He definitely truly respects the process here, and when it comes to the classified. She did it again. He takes classified documents very seriously. Oh, well, that'll prevent an FBI raid. That's all you got to say is he takes them seriously. Following Wednesday's briefing, it was first reported by NBC News that a second batch of classified documents were found, and that's the end of that story. So
separate from the other building. Last line.
Yes. Well, so, maybe that's the hint that it's not there.
So how many offices does he have where, and when are they all going to get raided?
Yeah. And this is actually an actual Fox News story, not like an AP one that they're reposting. So this writer could just be assuming that it was separate. It could be more shit from the same place, because remember what Biden said, a box, a locked drawer, or a closet. So maybe that's a clue that, hey, there are classified documents in all three in that building. Maybe he outed himself by saying that.
Well, and remember, it was a prepared statement. So this wasn't typical Biden, stammering around, eating an ice cream cone.
Yeah, but even with a prepared statement it's not really.
Oh, yeah, it's delivered terribly. But he was unscripted. His lawyers prepared that statement.
Yeah.
And it's his personal lawyers.
Yeah. Yeah. Not the White House counsel. Yeah. This story is from about 5 hours ago, and this is another Fox News story. Pressure builds on Garland, that's the AG, to appoint special counsel after second batch of classified Biden documents found. Pressured by who? Well, I think we can guess at that, right? Republican lawmakers and conservatives. That's an interesting distinction. Republican lawmakers and conservatives. Two distinct groups, right?
They can be, certainly.
And we're going to talk about that later, too. Reiterated calls Wednesday for AG Merrick Garland to appoint a special counsel to investigate President Biden's handling of classified documents after a second batch of Obama-era documents was discovered. So the problem is, and it's always this way, guys, the AG is not technically an independent part of the government, right? They're appointed by
no,
the
they're in the
president.
office of the executive branch.
Correct. So that's always kind of been the dilemma there. What was the guy's name under Trump?
Oh God!
You know who the
Yeah,
guy,
the big guy.
right? Well, come to find out, he's a bit of a snake in the garden, right? With with Trump, but that's not going to be the case here. I highly doubt they do this. If they do, it's a dog and pony show, right? They'll probably wave this away. This guy right here, you can't see the screen, can you? But Garland looks like a failed clone of Fauci. That's what he looks like. You know, kind of like Rise of Skywalker, you know, like those failed clones and stuff. That's what he looks like. Who is that back there? Is that like Benson? Let's see here. Yeah, and you know, all the typical ones are calling for this, but I highly doubt it's going to happen in any serious way. It'll just be a dog and pony show. Nothing really serious. Nothing really serious. It's all good. Sweep it under the rug, move on. And then watch 6 months later, they're going to find more somewhere. It'll
Or
keep
we'll find
happening.
out that they had more and ignored it. Like you can, special counsels don't have a whole lot of power.
Right.
I mean, they can be given power to investigate and, you know, subpoena and do all that kind of stuff, but that's the investigative part. They don't have any prosecutorial power. And you're not going to indict the president of the current sitting president of the United States for this.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, you can, the goal is to find out the true information, get it out to the public, so there's political consequences. Because let's be realistic, he ain't getting, like, even if the House passes articles of impeachment regarding this, Senate ain't going to convict him.
Right.
Like, they're not going to convict him of anything. So there's no teeth. And so you can have these investigations to get the information out there, and that is good.
Well, you'll notice. Go ahead.
But like, to expect some sort of like prosecution or anything out of that's just like you're dreaming.
Right. Equally is in the house. The other ones we've looked at, of course, haven't mentioned this. As we all know, the revelation that classified documents were found in Biden's possession came months after a similar situation related to former President Donald Trump's handling of classified documents. Following a months-long dispute between Trump and DOJ, FBI agents executed a search warrant, that's a nice way of saying it, of the former president's home in Mar-a-Lago to collect any classified documents he still obtained. Yeah, so it's interesting that the others don't mention that, because here's where I was going to go with this, guys. Like, you know, most of us watching this are anywhere probably from 30 to 50, right? That's kind of our age. And when we think of if you have older parents, or especially your grandparents, they are used to, like, you know, turning on the 6 o'clock news and thinking it's a trusted source and believing every word they hear. And that's the power of media, right? Especially with older people. And quite frankly, especially with younger people, a lot of the younger Gen Zers, as Timon called them earlier, they tend to believe the information that's presented to them. Whereas a lot of the iconoclasts from the 70s and 80s, we are very skeptical of it. So when you go to a CBS newscast, ABC, NBC, CNN these days, MSNBC, they believe all this stuff because, hey, it's the news. Why would they be wrong? So it's very important when not just lies are told by the media, but omissions as well. I have a couple of books over here in the library by Bernard Goldberg. He used to work for CBS, and he knows a lot of this stuff that Rather did, Dan Rather, back in the day. And what they choose to not report is just as important as what they do and what they lie about and what they mislead about. So something like this, you know, like not making that comparison in a lot of these stories, people don't make the connection like, wait a minute, shouldn't Biden be rated by the FBI as well? Of course, these days you also have social media and you have people out there saying it just like we're saying it here, right? But what they do in that case is they just characterize people like us as just being nut jobs that, oh no, it was different in that situation. But it's pretty scary because this is what sways elections. And that's why this O'Keefe guy, right? And the other story, which is a surprise because he is from CBS, he actually called out that it's very interesting that even though it was discovered before election day, it didn't come out. Do I think it would have affected things that much?
No.
You know what? Probably not, because I think the electorate, we've proven that they're stupid enough to vote the way that they do. That's where we're at in 2023, guys. We're knowing all that you knew. The economy being in the state that it's in, they still voted the way that they did. It's unreal. But the point is, the media has power. The appeal to authority.
Enormous power.
Yes. So this paragraph here, from Fox News, the only one we found so far that make that, I don't want to call it a comparison, but it just mentions it that, hey, also classified documents from the president just prior to this one, he got raided a few months ago. Like, yeah, I think that's important to know when we're talking about all this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I think you said that it's as important what they don't cover. I think it's more important what they don't cover, because I think if you look back even just to pandemic, right? The way that they covered the news about death and cases in the United States was presented in such a way as to imply that these things were not happening elsewhere, and it was a problem unique to this administration and this particular country. And that is extraordinarily and laughably untrue. Yeah, unfortunately, in network news. I have some ideas that we'll cover a little bit later, but just that kind of spin and that kind of coverage over the course of an entire year leading up to an election, of course, had a profound impact on the 2020 elections. Of course it did, because I think a lot of people in the United States were under the impression that, the way that was handled here was somehow egregiously bad as compared to some other places around the world, and that's just not true. It was much worse in several other countries, and much better in other countries that did far less egregious things to its people's liberties.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's still look. I'm parsing my words to even talk about it on fucking YouTube in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what's it tell you? But yeah, what they don't cover and what they choose not to elaborate on or educate people on is profound and very impactful.
And this isn't the book of the night, which I'll have later, and Greg probably won't because he always forgets. But
yes, I do always forget.
The two books, and quite honestly, a lot of Bernard Goldberg's later books were really kind of just really partisan, goofy style books, like 100 People Screwing Up America. Okay, yeah, I could have told you Nancy Pelosi screwing up America. But the two books that are great from him are Bias and then Arrogance. Like, he gives his firsthand experience of what he saw and what they did. And here's another guy, right, that's not really like, hey, I'm a conservative. He started out as like a Democrat, and he just kept getting so pissed off that he eventually pretty much came over to the right.
Yeah, but I certainly wouldn't consider him like hardcore, right? But
absolutely not. No.
But if you look at the press, there is no such thing as just regular right.
Right.
You never hear them say it's always right wingers, right wing extremists. It's always, there's never any moderate right.
Right.
We're all fascists.
Unless it's McCain. Yeah.
Unless it's McCain running against a
Yes.
Because they savaged him just the same as they savage everyone. because every Republican that's nominated for the presidency is going to be the worst that's ever existed and is even worse than Hitler.
Yes.
So like, even if Trump doesn't get the nomination in 2024, if let's say it's DeSantis, I mean, they're already starting to run articles like he's worse than Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Worse than the most evil man ever. And prior to that, George Bush was the most evil man ever. But now he's an okay guy.
Reagan? Yeah.
Yeah. And then Reagan, oh man, he was the worst ever, but now he's an okay guy. He was, he was one of the good ones.
Mm-hmm.
Every time. And that's part of a narrative that is specifically designed and presented by.
They never did it with Nixon though. So
no, they hated him right from the get go.
Yes. Yes.
Amazing how he got, completely blamed for a war that wasn't started in previous administrations, and a war that he actually ended.
Yep. So Josh Hawley out of Missouri said this: the double standard here is astounding. The underlying behavior at issue, a president's retention of old classified documents dating back to a past presidency, is materially the same in both cases. But in President Trump's case, the retention triggered an unprecedented raid, which is the right word, on the home of a former president, rationalized with a thicket of partisan doublespeak. Yeah.
I like the way he talks sometimes.
Well, and okay, here's the flip side of the coin, right? They didn't release this information before the election, but tell me the raid wasn't organized before the election with purpose.
Oh, of course.
Right? So, mm-hmm.
But then you're talking about like at a larger issue too, is that, these agencies within the federal government have been so weaponized, which is, interesting because there's a new select committee that's going to be investigating the investigators, which I find very interesting. I'm very much in favor of that. I'm like, ooh, let's get some dirt. Because I mean, remember, like the whole thing with the 2016 elections was Russian collusion, right? Based on a bullshit report, the Steele dossier that was then like handed over and then used, and then the FBI lied. The Department of Justice lied to a FISA court to obtain warrants to investigate the Trump campaign. Right. And it's and if you're expecting as a Republican, these middle management fuckheads in these agencies to do anything but stonewall, like you're sorely mistaken. They will stonewall it ever. Like we found out those two idiots who were fucking each other, that were involved in the dossier investigation and Trump investigation. I forget their names, worked for the FBI. They were absolutely partisan hacks.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. But the thing of it is, like, if we had come out, had come out in 2020 and said that Russians stole the election, and you know who was involved in that, right? Graham. And a few others, Lindsey Graham and a few others.
Oh, yeah.
If we had come out and said that in 2020, then it would be, okay, you lost your Twitter account, you lost your YouTube channel, and all that stuff.
Oh, exactly.
That's exactly that. Hillary herself said it. Russia stole the election.
Over and over and over again. And you can go even back further than that. Remember, like, it was the voting machines that screwed Kerry over in 2004.
Mm-hmm.
And that George W. Bush's reelection, by the way, with the popular vote, people are like, Republicans haven't won the popular vote. George W. Bush did in 2004. He won the popular vote.
Yep.
And of course the electoral vote. But like that was, they were saying that election was rigged and stolen and all that other jazz, and he was illegitimate.
Oh, isn't this true? If Greg likes a politician, they must be based as hell.
I think Hawley does a little bit too much grandstanding, and there's not enough teeth into what he does, but like he's got a sharp tongue. like if you watch him on committees and hearings and everything like that, he's he can swing away. It's entertaining.
Mhm.
And by the way, like this whole idea, like, well, there needs to be decorum in Congress and everything. Like, watch Parliament in Britain once.
Oh my gosh.
It's great. I love how nasty they get. It's great.
Yeah, brawls almost.
Yes. And remember, it was a huge story that like the I don't even remember the congressman's name, was like, you know, was lunging at Gates when they were, you know, got in a heated exchange about the speakership. That was like a story. Be like, oh, it was almost fisticuffs. I'm like, man, watch other government parliaments. It's insane. Like House and Senate rules of decorum and everything. Like you can't even call another like member of the House or Senate like a name.
Yeah,
that's considered out of line, and like you'll get, you know, you can get censored for it.
Yeah,
censured for it, not censored.
Censured,
disciplined,
mm-hmm.
You know, in a weird slap on the wrist way.
Trump Jr. was talking about it. Where's the raid?
Yeah, if we now have evidence that he's been careless in his past regarding, you know, classified documents, I think it justifies a raid on all of his homes and properties.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we found him here and then we found him over here, like where else could they be? We need to raid him and collect it all, because he's now demonstrated that he and his staff have been reckless and careless with precious classified documents. Like if we're going to have that standard, then let's have that standard.
Let's see what the Slimes is saying here. And here's what's funny. Like I read the, what'd you say?
Zoom in.
Yeah, their website's weird. So I read the headline and I'm like, okay, that's reasonable. Then you read this. So discovery of more classified records raises questions over Biden's handling of documents. Okay. But then you read this. The revelation is sure to intensify Republican attacks on the president.
The old Republicans pounce.
Mm-hmm. Who has called former President Donald J. Trump irresponsible for hoarding sensitive documents in his estate in Florida. So he's hoarding them. Biden is handling them. Hoarding,
mm-hmm.
Handling. Okay, that's not biased by Glenn Thrush.
Yikes.
What a name. What are his pronouns? President Biden's aides found a new batch of classified documents at a second location associated with Mr. Biden, according to a person familiar with the situation. A disclosure the second in 3 days that is sure to intensify Republican attacks.
See, there's the lead story is like, it's not that he did something bad. It's that the Republicans are reacting to it.
Yeah.
This is so classic.
It's like, guys, the president needs us. He needs us to stand behind him and be strong. This is
just nothing. This is just a partisan attack.
Mm-hmm. It is not clear where or when they were recovered, but Mr. Biden's aides have been scouring various places since November, when his lawyers discovered a handful of classified files. A handful, just a handful. They weren't hoarded, by the way, which included briefing materials on foreign countries. When they were closing a think tank office in Washington, Justice Department is reviewing the discovery to determine how to proceed. Or not raid is what he means. Mm-hmm. Republicans relished in the new revelations. Okay. Accusing Mr. Biden of hypocrisy and calling former President Donald J. Trump irresponsible for hoarding sensitive documents at his private club and residence in Florida. So there's that distinction there too, right? It's the Penn Biden Center and a private club and residence. So what this is like a very, he thinks he's being sneaky, right? And trying to use all these different terms to subconsciously affect opinion. This week, the new Republican chairman of the House Oversight Committee issued a far-ranging request to the National Archives and Records Administration, which is supposed to receive all highly sensitive materials after an administration leaves office for documents and correspondence. White House spokesman, member of the legal team for Biden, did not immediately respond. Of course not. He told reporters Biden told reporters in Mexico City that he was surprised to learn in November. Surprised to learn in November. I love that his lawyers found classified government documents. A day later, NBC News reported that another cache had been found at a different undisclosed location. Under government regulations, access to classified documents is limited to people who are currently authorized to see them, and the materials must be stored in special security containers to limit the risk of exposing sensitive information. So not in a box, locked in a closet, or whatever the hell he said. The Presidential Records Act says official documents in the White House, classified and unclassified alike, should be turned over to National Archives. After Trump left office, officials with the archives identified sensitive documents that had not been returned, prompting numerous appeals for their return. The matter was eventually referred to the Justice Department, which ultimately requested the search warrant that yielded recovery of classified materials, including some bearing the most restrictive top secret markings. Hey, remember this phrase, but her emails.
Yeah.
But his documents.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is a long ass article, all designed, right, to defend Biden versus what Trump did. That's all this is, and that's what the New York Slimes does, guys. So we'll follow this one. But I want to read this one really quick. I haven't delved into it yet. This is CBS News. Biden has a plan B for student debt relief. And as Greg said, he wished the entire university system would go on a plan B. Here's how it works. The Biden administration is pushing forward with another approach to tackling the student debt crisis. While its main initiative, a plan to forgive up to $20,000 in student loans per borrower, remains mired in legal limbo. Even if the debt forgiveness effort is struck down by the courts, the DOE Plan B could help millions of borrowers by overhauling income-driven repayment plans. It also addresses some of the worst pitfalls of student debt, such as negative amortization, or when a person's loan balance keeps growing despite their consistently making payments. I've never taken money out for a student loan. Are they talking about like interest?
I can't read it. Zoom in.
Well, they don't go into it here.
Oh.
Negative amortization when a balance keeps growing despite that's what interest is.
Mm-hmm.
That's like when you take out like a credit card, that has like a 25-30% interest rate. You're probably never going to pay it off. It'll take your whole damn life. That's why you got to double your payment.
If you only go with like the monthly minimum or whatever, yeah.
Yeah. Jeez. My question is, what are they doing to train these kids and their parents and, quite frankly, the schools, the high schools that give them advice to maybe not get into a student loan if they don't think they can repay it? Or go ahead.
I think the biggest question that should be asked and answered, or demanded to be answered, is like, why is it costing so much?
Yes.
In the first place, why are colleges so goddamn expensive? Where is the money going? How can it possibly cost this much? Because most college lectures, halls consist of like a podium and a bunch of seats. Like, where is the money going? How can it possibly? And what they're charging these kids for dorms is like more than New York City rent. when you factor in like the time that they stay there and the size of their rooms and like the square footage of these holes that they get jammed into. Like, why is it so goddamn expensive? Why are and these colleges are literally screwing people over. Like, if any private company were to mislead, false advertise, and defraud its customers in even a tenth of the way that these the college university system does, they'd all be in jail.
Yes.
Where's the consumer protection for these college campuses? Like, how, with gazillions of administrators and all this other stuff, and like, why are we treating these universities like resorts? You go to these campuses, like, I can spend 30 minutes on a campus and probably come up with like $1 million in fucking budget cuts.
Mm-hmm.
Just walking around, be like, why is that being built? Who built that? Who authorized that? Why are we doing that? Because these colleges are, because they're saying like, well, we need to be competitive. Like, why? You're turning away students all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You're denying, there's a limited, you have a finite number of applicants and number of students you can take each semester or each year, and you're turning away a shit ton. Like, why do you need to advertise when people, like, you're selling out of your product and you're deciding to double your ad budget?
Mm-hmm.
Why? No company would do that, but these colleges do. Every college endowment should be seized until all the lawsuits for fraud are settled. And everybody who's ever been to any one of these colleges should righteously sue for fraud and false advertisement. They're making promises they cannot and do not deliver on. They rip off students left and right. Many of them never even graduate. They end up dropping out, and all that money that they spent, just they end up paying on without even getting the degree that, supposedly gives them better access to a higher paying jobs. It's all a fucking game. Like, I think there's a couple things, and we'll get into it with the conservative thing, but I think where Republicans are really, really failing is that we allow the other side to attack and destroy our institutions, our industries, quote unquote, our industries. They'll happily put everybody out of business that they don't like or that they think supports us, the right. Oil industry, gas industry, coal industry. They'll use environmental bullshit, slogans to justify it, but they'll go after anybody and anything ruthlessly. Right. They create organizations and fund organizations whose sole purpose is to organize boycotts. Media Matters. Mm-hmm. They pay people to listen to, much more prominent podcasts than ours, of course. So, hey, Media Matters, if you're watching, thanks for the view. But, we're certainly not to that point. But they pay people just to clip out of context and organize boycott campaigns to dissuade advertisers from doing business with conservative talk radio and podcasts. And I think one of the mistakes of the right is that we expect too much when we don't have power. Or we bear, and what I mean by don't have power is like, we'll have, what do we have? A 5-vote edge in the House of Representatives. We don't have the Senate and we don't have the presidency, but now we're going to demand the world out of the House of Representatives. And at the state level, we're not doing enough in the states where we can do. Like, we're not going to be able to change election law in California. We don't have the political power. You have to hold office in order to pass bills. The Republicans are never going to take the three branches.
Yeah.
They're not going to take the House, the Senate, and the governorship in California or New York or Illinois. Fuck. So don't expect the miracles there. But where we do have the power, in states like Florida right now and Texas, second and third most populous state in the country now. Maybe New York's in there somewhere, right? We do have some power. And what we need to do in those states is start enacting some of these reforms and start going after these institutions, especially fucking colleges. No reason that the university system in the state of Texas or Florida should fund any professor or class that teaches fucking any assortment of SJW and left-wing purposeful classes, things that don't, the only job you can get is think tanks, blogs, and professorships. That's your 3 career avenues if you get a gender studies degree. Why are we funding it at all? Because and it varies by state, but each state puts a lot of money into their own state universities. It is not funded 100% with tuition. They shouldn't be getting a dime. They should fire every one of those professors and throw them off campus. Get rid of them. You have the political power. Execute it. Do it. At least save your universities, and give the rest of the right in the rest of the country that wants to go to a sane university that doesn't have fucking safe spaces and garbage classes like majoring in taking a class in Beyonce. Like, get rid of all that shit, defund it, fire the people that are teaching it, and teach the important stuff. And you'll draw out of state tuition all over from the country, because they will flock to your school to go to a sane, reputable institution. Get rid of them, and not just at the major colleges. So you're not just like Florida State, like every tech school, every trade school, every community college. Throw them all out on their asses and ban the classes. You have the political power. Use it. Sorry.
That's not surprising. That's not surprising, Biggles. That's not surprising. It's science. #science. I saw a social media post sometime in the last couple of days, and I think it was, where was it? It might have been on like a business social media thing. And it said, my kid told me that they watched a video on something like math or some shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they figured out how to do this math, this type of problem, right? I think it was a YouTube video. And they said, no joke, they went to school next week, and the teacher said, okay, it's time to watch a video on learning how to do this problem. And it was the same video. So I think someone might have retweeted this. I don't remember, but the point is that school, especially like elementary, is nothing more than like government funded daycare at this point.
Yeah, copy pasted lesson plans and shit like that. Like look, if you're a brand new teacher and you haven't figured things out and you got to get your own lesson plan going, like, it's probably a tough slog. But like when you've been doing it for like 10 years, and by the way, the curriculum does not change very much. Like world history doesn't change that much.
Right.
From year to year, because it's just 1 year. So like, you don't have to revise your history. Like if you're a history teacher in a high school in bumfuck nowhere, like your curriculum's the same every fucking year. It's copy paste.
Well, Star Wars fans out there, think about Attack of the Clones. Like, how many teachers were there, for all the Jango Fett clones? They're like watching screens and shit. So most of the stuff that you could learn like that, like math and writing and even like foreign languages, watch a freaking video, and you don't have to go to school to do it. It's like, find a way to do that from home.
Right.
Defunding public education is another sacred cow. Like, oh no, you can't do that. It's school. It's for the kids.
Yeah, you're ruining their kids' future and blah 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 and everything else like that. I don't ever see a path where schools get defunded. But again, where you have the power, exercise it. Use it. And we can't be afraid of being like, oh, that'd be hypocritical if we use the system to promote our agenda. Okay, like, so you are now committed to a path of self-destruction. You are going to bring a bubble wand to a tank battle.
Yeah.
And you're dead set on using that because that's your convictions, and you don't want to stoop to the enemy's tactics. You're principled. You're also going to get run over.
Yep.
You think, like, you know, you're like, I'm sure that those students in Tiananmen Square had a lot of great principles. They got ran over.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's like your path, like you're committed to being a loser, and you're committed to a path of destruction. So, like, great, you stood on your principles. Good job. You're dead.
Yeah. Let's see here. The plan to reform income-driven repayment plans was first announced in August, but was overshadowed by the Biden administration's blueprint for forgiving up to $20,000 in debt per borrower. But with the debt relief program stopped in its tracks by legal challenges and now headed for the conservative-leaning Supreme Court, the Education Department said it is moving forward with the other part of its plan, which will overhaul IDRs with the goal of helping lower and middle income borrowers. The IDR overhaul is hugely important. Persis Yu, Deputy Executive Director of the Student Borrower Protection Center, wow, an advocacy group for people with student debt, told CBS Money Watch. We see so many borrowers say, I don't get it. I took out $15,000. Now I owe $40,000, which is emotionally demoralizing and financially devastating. IDRs worked in a really toxic way before, she said. But again, like, I think it's all good to say, hey, we're going to try and help the people out. Okay. You know, I understand the intention there, but what are we doing to prevent this from growing? What are we doing to prevent morons for signing up with this shit? Like, again, for some kind of degree that will never be useful.
We're encouraging more people to do it. Like, it's actually going to have the opposite effect. It's going to make the problem worse over time, because now people are going to expect that they really don't have to pay the loans that they're signing for. Mm-hmm. And it's going to drive tuition up.
And you know what? They'll have a good argument because, hey, why did this generation get bailed out? Why can't I?
And it's going to drive tuition costs up. Mm-hmm. Because you have finite class space, and now you're going to have more people trying to attend. Supply and demand.
Yeah, and I just don't like this whole cultural drive to send people to college. Like, that's, oh, you got to do that. It's like, well, if you know you're like a lazy bum, or quite frankly, if you know you're not the brightest crayon in the box, maybe it's not the best option for you, because you wind up going a semester, dropping half your classes, but still having to pay for them. So you've got 6 credit hours, 1 semester under the belt, and then a bunch of debt. And then you go to the next semester, same thing happens. Before you know it, you're 5 years in, you're in your 20s, you still don't have a degree, you're living in your parents' basement, or living with your girlfriend or wife.
Yeah.
It's like, find out what works for you. But this whole drive to not just push people toward that, but to look down on them if they don't. I think it's disgusting.
And the thing is you're wasting, well, you know, I wouldn't say it's a waste for everybody.
This is the greatest quote ever from Biggles. College was useless. I just drank for 7 years. Are you a lawyer, Biggles? 7 years? 0 debt though. Well, that's good.
It'd be like that line from Tommy Boy. It'd be like, a lot of people take 8 years to graduate college. And David Spade's response is, yes, they're called doctors.
Yeah.
But like, what I would do and of course, this is just wishful thinking. I would can the entire system in favor of a certification program, like a skill certification. Like you can have your higher education classes for like philosophy and things like that, and your artsy fartsy degrees, and those should cost a lot of money if you want to go into that field. But I would go with certifications, and what I would start doing is and I'm not a big tax and spender, right? But I would actually institute a payroll tax for positions that require a college education. Another 2% paid by the employer. Stop requiring college education for positions that do not need it. The on-the-job training is worth 1 year's experience is worth 10 years of college. In almost every job that's out there, bar some of the more very technical and very elaborate positions, like maybe like lawyers, doctors, and things like that. But most of the positions that require college education do not actually require them at all. It's just a bunch of people that went who feel that since they had to go, everybody else should too.
Right. And that drives up the need for everybody, or the sense that, well, in order to get a good job, you need to go to college. But none of the college, like if you look and you ask your colleagues, if you work in even a reasonably sized workplace, you ask all the college graduates what their majors were and compare it to the actual positions they're holding. This audience probably wouldn't be surprised, but I think the general public would find it very interesting that almost nobody has a degree related to anything in their field at all. The actual job that they ended up doing in the real world that's making a living, providing them an income.
With the exception of things like, if you're any kind of accountant, right, at a company, because there are audits and stuff like that. Like, who do you have doing your books? It has to be somebody that has the proper, like you said, those certifications. And
I would replace that with certifications.
Well, I know, but a lot of times right now, those certifications come with, like a degree or whatever. So,
but if you look at take accounting, for example, right? Because I went to a tech school for computer programming, and I had to take 2 years of accounting for my computer programming degree, because most of the jobs at the time were in the local area for programmers, because we're going back a number of years now, where like you were gonna hope to land a job working for one of the insurance companies, programming programs to spit out reports on AS400 systems, learning like COBOL.
Yeah,
not exactly prepping you for a job of the future in any way, but prepping you for a job. But that was for computer programming. So you look at these people that have the accounting degrees and the garbage classes they had to take in order to get that degree that have nothing to do with anything related to their field at all. Sociology. I had to take a sociology class and an economics class for computer programming.
Well, here's the thing.
At a tech school.
Well, here's the thing right here. Like, my image, my face that you're looking at now is permanently ensconced on the wall of the company I work at for IT, right? No computer science degree. What's the other one? Computer science and information technology. No IT degree. Just a guy that knew the business and knew how to say, okay, this is what we need the applications, plural, that I worked on to do. And, smart enough to figure out some of the technical stuff and tell the developers, this is how you build it. That's all it takes. Now, I'm not saying anyone could do that, but if you have the drive and you have the ability then you can do that. And I did it, right? But most of the people, and we had 800 people in IT at the peak, right?
Mhm.
I was looked down on because I wasn't one of them, right? Because I didn't spend the 6 years
Yep.
at university, as the Englishman would say, getting like a computer science or an IT degree. But I outperformed them all because that's who I am, and it's just the way it is. But the point is, guys, like you can, if you're smart enough and you have the drive, you can do it, and you should be awarded for it. So it's not just like office work, but think about this: like if you're really good at welding, at electrical stuff, at
Mhm.
plumbing, whatever it is, maybe you get the certification and eventually you hire other people, and then suddenly you're not the one doing the hands-on work, right?
Correct.
The possibilities are endless. Like um what my son's going to start doing in the military when he gets out, it's yeah, it's going to be like blue collar work, but someone else that got out and did that, they now have their own business and on one of the coasts, and they hire people to travel not just around the country but around the world to do the work. And yeah, he may train them and give them advice on how to, this is how you do it, but he no longer does the hands-on work. So the point is, have a target in life, know what you want to do, and then think, what am I good at? That not only could I say, hey, I'm good at doing this, but I'm good at teaching it and expanding it too. That's the advice I would give anybody.
The other advice I would give is that if you're expecting, like, look, a job is in work in general is can be fulfilling, but it's doesn't have to be. Like, you don't, the job is to pay the bills. The home life and the family and everything else should be where you seek your fulfillment.
Right, right.
Like, don't get so caught up in, like, I got to get this degree, I got to have this career, I got to have a certain status and everything, because, like, most of those people aren't really happy where they end up. And, like, I think we place a little bit too much of value on the status symbol of education, degree, and everything like that. And the chat's very focused on IT and engineering and everything, which is great. IT and technology is one of the areas where certifications actually are more prominent and already in use, because the need for those people that have, and look, the certification just says, I know the system. I'm certified in it. The other stuff, the college degree, just shows like you put time, you did time served. And what employers look for, and especially employers who are college educated themselves, they're like, well, I'm looking for people that did the path that I took. And so again, I needed a degree, so you should need a degree. Those are my people.
Well, we weren't even doing certs. Like,
Yeah.
I think they started right around the time I was exiting, but I guarantee
They're more common now than.
Well, and I guarantee, that they're not going to they're not, those certs are not going to guarantee that you are good at the system, or it like someone else
Correct.
would that put the time in and has experience in it for 20 years, right?
Well, and that's the other thing. 1 year of experience is still worth so much more.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like if I were to ever leave, and go back into IT, it's almost like you have to lie. Like, yeah, I have certs, just so that they would look at your resume.
Right. Yeah.
And
not
then
just,
if
hey,
they
let's
ever
see what
give you a
can do,
test,
kid. Or,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's all these gates that employers put up. And one of the reasons the college system is what it is now is a lot. It's employer driven. Like, there's,
Yeah.
and that's very, very unfortunate, because most of these career paths don't require that kind of commitment. Like, you don't have to go into, $50,000 in debt to get through a gateway to a job where, when you get there, you're going to be fucking useless anyway. Like I worked a long time in the retail field, right? Certainly not a technical job or anything like that, but I worked with a lot of people that came into at my level, straight from college into the company, and into a middle management level, and they didn't know shit.
Yeah.
they didn't know shit. They had the degree, but they were dumb, or they were just inexperienced and didn't know how anything worked and had no experience to be able to anticipate the next thing. And in a retail environment, it's always the next season. There's always something to prepare for. You learn things as you gain experience. That's why companies pay you more for being there longer, is because you're more valuable because of the experience that you have for working there and in that position. You understand how the company operates, how things work, how systems work, how to deal with things that they could never teach you, because so much shit arises that that you have to make judgment calls and sound decisions on that you couldn't possibly train. You couldn't train or role play a tenth of them. Mm-hmm. But you need to know how things work and have a good head on your shoulders and be able to make solid decisions and stand by them in order to do the job well. And these college graduates would struggle a lot. They had the degree, sure, but that didn't mean shit. They were useless to me. Like it would be like, I would have been better I would just do their work for them, and they never hired them in the first place. Right. For a long while. And some of them never got good. Mm-hmm. Because they never bothered learning. They thought that their degree granted them the privilege, like they were privileged into the position, and they didn't have to continue to earn or justify their existence in the company because they had the degree, they did the work.
Oh yeah. I've heard them say that before.
It's a sense of entitlement. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think one thing is the conservative states that are out there, and there's some very populous conservative states out there. They're not all like fucking, Wyoming, right? That these states should start going after the college systems, because we're not going to get it passed at the federal level. One, the college system is state level. Two, we're not going to be able to control Congress with the numbers necessary to make those changes, but in certain states we can. And states, like the whole purpose and reason for having states and a republic is that we can have these little experiments state by state. And people are free to move state to state. There's not travel restrictions. Like if Florida starts canning all these garbage positions and be like, oh no, we'll lose all the people that want to come to Florida to learn gender studies. Oh well, plenty of other states for them to go to. We'll just take the other people. Yeah. And I think what Florida will find is, or in Texas and some of these other states, they'll find that they're going to be able to retain those people in their own states. Because one of the other issues is, at least in my state, Wisconsin, is like, people go to the UW system, University of Wisconsin system, and then they leave the state to go work somewhere else after it's done. Mm-hmm. So we're putting all this money at the state level into a college system, and like the people, there's brain flight. They leave with those degrees to go work somewhere else because either the jobs aren't here or there's not an incentive structure to stay here. And Florida has a pretty good incentive structure. It's got the nice weather.
That's why there's so many freaking Packers fans around the country, damn it.
By the way, fuck the Green Bay Packers. Glad they lost. I hope at least like 5 members of the team off themselves and out of embarrassment.
Why?
Because I've learned to hate football. Yeah. They got beat by the Lions. They got swept by the Lions this year. What an embarrassment. They missed the playoffs. They was winning. They were in the playoffs, and they choked at home against traditionally the worst team in the division.
Wait a minute. Weren't the Packers the team that were roughing up some officials a few weeks ago?
It was this last week they made the news because that one guy. No, the one guy pushed one of the trainers that came to the field.
Trainers, yes.
Yeah. And of course that got blown up. And if we're going to talk NFL, I got to go on this tangent here. The thing with the Buffalo Bills player, and I don't even remember his name, number 3 or whatever.
Damar. Just like
Right,
from
Damar.
DS9, Damar. Yeah.
I don't want players to be permanently hurt or killed on the field.
That's a noble stance. I mean,
yeah, it's a pretty reasonable, level stance to be like, yeah, like these guys playing football don't deserve to die playing it. Flukes happen and shit like that. But the way the NFL turned around and spun it into like the feel good story of the year or whatever, like, ooh, we're going to have like every game this last week, they had like a thing, we support this guy, we're praying for him. And they turned it into such a PR thing that was so disingenuous and so fake. It made me kind of puke.
mm-hmm.
And that's not like, I don't wish Damar, whatever his name is, any ill will, but like, this is like one guy on one team who got hurt and is fine now. Like, this is not a national news story, but the way the NFL, because modern sports aren't about the game anymore. It's about the narrative. It's just like these reality TV show competitions and everything. It has nothing to do with who's the best singer. It's in order to get on the shows now, you have to have some goddamn stupid sob story.
Yeah.
Be like, when I was 5 years old, I lost my leg. So put me on the show.
So yeah, so my in-laws watch that singing show. I think there's only one left.
The Voice, I think.
That's it. So,
there's the Masked Singer now.
Oh my god,
what a stupid concept.
Creepy. That's creepy. But in any event, I noticed when we were living there, the show's on like every night of the week, it seems like, and then every single performer afterward, it's like the hosts or whatever they are, they're like, "Oh, you're so great," and it's all this like really positive affirmation stuff, and I'm like,
yeah.
Does every performance end with this touchy feely like?
It almost feels like it now.
Stuff?
No, because they also put plants in there that are just so god awful that they're like your William Hungs. Remember that guy that did the shebangs on American Idol? God,
no,
feels like 20 years ago now. But yeah, he came. They have the joke contestants that, of course, come in and irritate the judges, and they rip on them, and then they leave. And they're not even serious. They're just there to get on TV.
Right.
It's all narrative. It has nothing to do with the level. I mean, it has something to do with the level of talent, but like, out of all the people that they interview for the show, right? All the people that apply to be contestants on these shows, the people that make the show aren't the best singers. Like, understand that. They're not the most talented people. They have to look. They have to have a certain look, of course, which is fine. Like, you're putting them on TV. You don't want a bunch of fuglies. Okay. But
you got to be Miss Universe for that.
But you have to have some like heartstring pulling narrative in order to make it through on these shows. And it's the same thing now with the NFL. And like ESPN, E-Clay is part of responsible that. And that's another thing that I would do on the state level. That I think that really should be done. And it's a little in the weeds, but I think conservatives need to start, like, they're willing to destroy any of our so-called industries and everything like that. It's time to stake. It's time to take a page out of their playbook and start going after Hollywood. Complaining about movies on YouTube is fine and dandy. It could be an entertaining discussion, but like, if you think that's going to change the culture war, like, you are delusional.
Yeah.
What needs to happen, and there's things that you can do, again, at the state level. You take the two, just Texas and Florida. You do this in Texas and Florida. You pass a law that says that any cable channel that has a carriage fee of over 25 cents per subscriber, the customer can opt out of that specific channel and get a refund or a deduction in their monthly bill.
Mm-hmm.
Because one thing, ESPN, if you're a cable, if you haven't cut the cable yet, cut it. Those in the audience, but ESPN gets its money. Cable is socialist. All right. The way cable operates is that they get carriage fees, which is a fee that goes to the channel that's put on the cable service per subscriber, not per watcher. It's not based on who's watching the channel. Like if you look at any number of news articles, like maybe 20% of cable subscribers even watch ESPN, but they're paying $5 a month every month for it. And it's funny. This is one of those things that the left would actually encourage, would kind of not be opposed to in some degrees, because it would actually hurt Fox News a lot too. Because Fox News is one of the most expensive channels on basic cable, and that their carriage fee is something like $2. And I was just reading a website the other day. It's like, oh, they get like $1.8 billion a year from carriage fees from cable subscribers. Because if you take nationally, like, okay, there's 60 million cable customers, right? Each one paying $5 a month for ESPN. How much money is that going to Disney ESPN? Because, by the way, Disney owns ESPN.
Yep.
$300 million a month from cable subscribers, most of which never tune in for even a minute of ESPN coverage. NFL Network, one of the more expensive channels on your cable bill. Same thing. I think there's like $1.74 or something like that. And it varies based on these are negotiated with each cable provider. So it's not a flat fee. But you want to start taking a chunk out of these things, start making it possible for consumers to opt out of these bundled packages for in exchange for a deduction on their bill. How many, like if we could get 10 million people less to stop paying for a service they never use ever, like ESPN, $50 million a month. Start going after these goddamn companies, because what it does is this money goes to the companies. The companies bid up the NFL contracts and the NBA contracts in order to cover the games, and it's all going to the goddamn athletes, who, by the way, play in publicly funded buildings. So, like, sports in general is fucking the population two ways. You're getting fucking split roasted. You're in a lot of municipalities, you're paying property, you're paying additional sales tax or bonds or anything else to build these gigantic stadiums for these $50 million a year players to go play in. And on the flip side, you're paying it on your cable bill, if you have cable. And even if you're not watching it, not even a second. Start going after their income, start going after that. And it's a reasonable, consumer-friendly regulation, right? Hey, look, you know, your cable bill is pretty high, pretty expensive. Wouldn't you like to be able to opt out of the channels you never watch?
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't that be nice?
I've wanted a, whatever you want to call it, like a selecto switch, for years. But
it doesn't have to be pure a la carte. Basic cable can offer it as a bundle, but then offer the customers the ability to opt out of specific channels in exchange for a refund on the carriage or a reduction in their bills equal to the carriage fee of that channel. So if ESPN is charging $5 a cable subscriber for Comcast cable, and I don't want ESPN, I should get a $5 reduction. If I cancel ESPN off of my cable package, I should get a $5 reduction. That's $5 not going to goddamn Disney every month. Because $300 million a month to ESPN. Defund ESPN.
Every sport politicized.
Fucks Disney, fucks the sports networks. Yeah, and the same goes for the SEC channel and everything else. Stop. Allow consumers to be able to opt out of this shit. And not fund shit they don't like.
What should the channels be? Like, if you don't like sports, you don't need ESPN, right?
No.
If you don't
but you're paying for it, and you're paying for the NFL Network, and you're paying for Fox Sports, you're paying for all these sports packages and channels that you're not watching.
If you don't,
and they're a huge part of your bill.
If you don't like left-wing politics, you can opt out of NBC and CNN. If you don't like right-wing, you can opt out of Fox.
Out of Fox News.
If you don't like science, what the fuck does Discovery own now? They own a bunch of shit now.
Yeah, well, Warner Discovery. Hey, I don't want to give money to Turner Broadcasting. You know, fuck you, fuck the USA commercial every 4 seconds network.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Some of these cable channels would go away. And to that, I say, fine. Let them go away. They're unneeded. They're unnecessary. They don't produce any value.
Yep. By the way, have you seen the wrestling news?
Some Saudi Arabia is related to that.
Yeah. So
I saw
the short of
tweets on it.
Yeah, the short of it is that Vince forced his way back onto the board.
Mm-hmm.
2 board members left, maybe 3 in protest. His daughter left as co-CEO, and now the rumor is, and again, this is all like Doomcock anonymous source type stuff, but the rumor is, because there's a lot of those in wrestling. You think like like science fiction stuff's bad, wrestling quote unquote journalism and sources is the worst thing ever, and it has been for 25 years since the internet was a thing. But the point is, the rumor is that the Saudi public fund is the top bidder, and they're just having to go through the motions. If that happens, like, you think I boycott all the others? Like, totally done. And it's pretty sad, not to go into it too far, but it was almost like a Lucasfilm thing, right? Where you had this truly independent company, and they've been public for about 20 years now, but still, it was a family-owned business where they did what they wanted to do. And, if they were on a network, they pissed off the network sometimes, but that'll be gone. It'll be completely gone. But in any event, I'll be totally out, just like I boycott everything else. Like, I'm done. And I will. And here's the good thing about this. So when it comes to wrestling, tape trading has been a thing since the 80s, right?
Yep.
So now these guys have taken the tapes and they've transferred them to digital. And now you can get almost anything out there. Like my buddies. Yeah. Iran #1. Everyone else but Dewey. But in any event, and plus he's from Iran and not Saudi Arabia. But anyway, that's just being like really nitpicky. One of my buddies from Four Corners, he's got like a shed full of media, right? And he's looking into some stuff that I want. And not only that, but the network now on Peacock, like only 5 to 10% of the library they own is on there, and they could put it all up there. And they bought out like almost every not independent, but territorial promotions library. I think one of the only ones they don't own is like Pacific Northwest, like the Oregon territory and stuff. But point is, I've got access to it, so like, fuck you guys. And that guy doing that, it's out of pure spite is why he came back and did that. Vince came back out of pure spite, right? To say, hey, I got pushed out for good reason if you don't know what he did. And so now I'm going to come back just to sell the company and pretty much destroy my own creation. Pretty disgusting. Deutschwell. A la carte would be best, but I've been on streaming like for live TV since its inception, and it's getting to the point where it's just as expensive as cable. It was a savings at first, but now it's just as expensive. So,
well, and the thing is like, like I don't think it actually hurts the cable companies, but again, if it does, I'm fine with that.
mm-hmm.
Like, look, again, it kind of, circling back, like we need to start fighting with the tools that we have, and we need to start playing the game instead of losing and whining.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's all fine. Like, we need to talk about these things, but if all we're doing is just complaining about the way things are and demanding that everything, somebody else makes it all better, but really, like, you don't participate in any campaigns, you don't do any fundraising, you don't do anything, other than just complain on Twitter or on YouTube. Like, if you're expecting that to work, like, I'm sorry, like, look at the evidence, man. It ain't working. And you can complain about election results and like election laws and in states we don't control. But like, we don't control them. We don't have, like, we can't change the laws in places where we don't have power. Like, it would be great if we could end ballot harvesting in California. Good luck.
Mm-hmm.
You got to win there first.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes winning means accepting some less than ideal candidates at times. Because like, if you're scoring things on like a 0 to 100 scale, when it comes to like the value of a, of a candidate, I'll take a 70 over a 0.
Well, but here's the thing in general, Greg, like the primaries, that's when you get like really picky and stuff, right? But when it comes to the general, get your ass to the booth and vote red straight down the board, period. Straight down the ticket.
Yes. But in the primaries too, you have to go into a primaries. You have to be pragmatic. Like if your ideal candidate, like you talk to a guy and he's 100%, you're like 100% aligned on every bill, every issue, every possible thing under the sun. But the guy's a douchebag who isn't relatable, isn't good on TV, or just doesn't articulate his ideas very well. Like, yes, he's the best candidate. He would vote the best way possible. But he still has to win the general. So you have to couch some of your expectations, I think, with some of these candidates, particularly in primaries, and not go for the wackadoos that won't win the general. Yeah, they'll have great sound bites. They'll say the right things and you'll be like, yes, I really love them. And they'll lose. And in their place, you're going to have somebody that has like 0% of your values. So you like use primaries wisely. Don't necessarily get all excited about the most, righteous libertarian right winger out there. Because if they can't win the general election, you might as well vote for a third party. So you have to be, I think you have to be careful. And I think in some cases, and also, of course, it varies by district, right? If you're speaking of like non-statewide election office, just House of Representatives, right? A person like Marjorie Taylor Greene can win her district because it's pretty safe. A person like AOC is going to win her district because it's pretty safe. They ain't going to vote Republican. Like, she could go full on wackadoo and publicly fuck dogs. And they're going to still vote for her. In fact, they'd probably be more enthusiastic about it. But like, she's good. Like, so you elect your wackadoos in your very safe districts, but in the non-safe districts and the purple districts, you're going to have to be a little bit more pragmatic in your thing. And here's why some statewide things matter. And what happened over the course of since 2016 is Republicans have gotten completely and totally shellacked from 2016 to 2020 in gubernatorial and in a lot of state houses. What happens every 10 years in this country? We have a census and we redistrict. We redraw the district lines. And if you don't hold power in your state at that moment, you kind of fuck yourself for the next 10 years. Because the other side's going to redistrict not in your favor. They're going to water down your district to make it as purple or leaning blue as possible. And that's why you get the gerrymandering, and we can get into discussions about that. I think it's completely legal and it's fine. It's constitutional anyway. But you got to have the power in order to draw the lines. And one thing that happened in the 2010, right? There was this thing called the Tea Party that popped up, right? and we got a lot of power. And like Obama was very effective as a president for his party on the top of the ticket. Down ticket, abysmal record. Like they lost state houses, they lost governorships, they were bleeding seats all over the country. Right when it needed to happen, because we were allowed to redistrict the states in favor of ourselves as conservatives or as Republicans. So this shit matters. Like, don't get so wound up all the time about all the federal stuff. Like, you still, like, if you care about politics and you care about this country and you care about the issues, the local elections and state elections freaking matter. Because if you don't have the power in the states, you're not going to rewrite the election rules. You're not going to be able to shore up diddly shit. So you got to win. And sometimes there was electing conservatives.
Well, that's where the Buckley rule came from.
Yeah.
You guys know what that is? If not, I'll explain it to you. It's from William F. Buckley, and it says, hey, when you have choices, you go with these two factors: the most conservative and electable candidate.
Electable.
Combined. Not just one or the other.
Yeah.
So
we don't need no goddamn... imagine how different this country would be if, like, Aiken. Remember that guy?
No.
He's the one that made the really stupid arguments regarding abortion, and he lost this election that he should have won, and it could have been the deciding vote in Obamacare.
I don't remember.
Mattered.
Well, you take like a Newt Gingrich, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not electable, just like kind of old and dorky, right?
Very effective House Speaker, though.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, for sure. The 90s was a golden era. But then you take someone like a Trump, who some people would say, no, he's not electable, but his style and stuff was appealing to a lot of people. But quite frankly, a lot of his policy positions I didn't like and still don't like. Just don't forget, guys, he did stuff like promoting like a bump stock ban and a bunch of other stuff. Not a huge friend of the Second
Criminal
Amendment.
justice, letting prisoners out of prison reform.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
so point
honestly,
is, though,
his budgets were horrendous.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at a table right now. The federal budget, like the off budget, so non-Medicare, non-Social Security money, federal budget, 2017, $3.18 trillion. We won't count 2020 because, of course, pandemic. So 2019. 3.54. So he grew federal spending outside of Medicare and Social Security by $400 billion a year. That's not a great record. And one thing that frustrates the hell out of me, and we can go and you can cover it, the same thing happened during the George W. Bush years, is we only seem to care about the budget when the other guy is in office. When our guy, quote unquote, our Republic is in office, like suddenly like deficits and shit don't matter. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking in regards to tax cuts, but just actual spending. Just the regular budget spending. So in 2017, $3.18 billion was the budget. And this is according to the Office of the OMB, which is the White House. The estimate for 2027, $5.5 trillion. So we're going to go in 10 years, from 3.2 to 5.5 a year. A year. Oh. That is some remarkable bad budgeting. but it ain't just Democrats that do it. Like I said, Trump's budgets weren't very good. He was, and like, he didn't get the infrastructure bill that he wanted, because, you know, we can complain about Joe Biden's infrastructure bill, but Trump was pushing for $1 trillion infrastructure bill too.
Well, yeah, but again, the original point, that style that a lot of people latched onto, right? That's what got him elected, and it was preferable to the other path, right? In 2016, imagine what a Hillary Clinton presidency would have done.
I'll be honest. Like, I don't dislike Trump. I voted for him in 2020. Like, I don't hate the guy, but he is not this 4D master chess player that people think he is on the right. And he didn't win 2016. Hillary lost. Because if you look at election results in all those states that he won that nobody thought he'd win, they elected a retard with a goiter on his fucking neck in Pennsylvania. They reelected Whitmer in fucking in Michigan. Okay. One of the worst governors in the entire country when it came to the pandemic response. She was absolutely terrible. Easily won re-election. Easily. In 2020. So one has to go back to 2016 and ask yourself, was it really Trump, or did just a whole lot of people really not like Hillary? And how much did Bernie Sanders' primary run turn off voters in the general? Because they felt that Hillary was, the insider, played dirty pool during the primary campaign, had those super delegates, remember, and kind of like had it in the. She wasn't elected; she was anointed or appointed, and that turned off a lot of Bernie bros in 2016.
Yeah,
I don't think Trump has a shot in hell of carrying Michigan, Wisconsin, or Pennsylvania in 2024. And I don't mean like, his chances went from 50-50 down to 30%. I would say 0% chance that he carries any of those states. Those states, and one of them's mine, will literally elect a dead retard over Trump. Because he's burnt. Fair or unfair, he's burnt. So, this idea that he's going to, I don't think he even wins the primary at this point. Honestly, I hope. Again, don't like him, but his negatives are so goddamn high, and he rallies the other side to such. Yes, he drives a lot of votes on our side, but he drives just as many, if not more, against on the other side. And you have to factor that in. And again, you have to win in order to be able to do anything. And you can whine about Arizona and can complain about California and piss and moan about Michigan and all these other things, but it don't matter. Complaining, you're not going to be able to change it on the federal level, and you're not going to be able to change anything on the state level there. So, okay, you want to whine about it, fine. It ain't going to change anything. You got to win.
Something we forgot to talk about. Not this time, but I think we forgot to talk about it in the past, was the 17th. 17th Amendment to United States Constitution.
Is that the direct election of senators?
Yep. Guys, that's one of the worst things to happen to the country. Where
they turned the Senate basically into an extra house.
Yeah.
the design and intent of the way the republic was structured was that the Senate would represent the states.
Yep.
So you represented basically the governor and the legislature of the states. If you were the Senate, if you were the senator from the state, and the reason they were given long terms was deliberate, and they were staggered in such a way that two senators from the state wouldn't get elected at the same time, barring some special election of a resignation or death of a senator or something like that, which happened in Georgia in 2020. But that, a very rare exception. But yeah, the states were supposed to be protected from the federal government, and that was one of the protections. And the Senate was supposed to be a very deliberative and slow body that didn't swing wildly. So we wouldn't have wild swings in governorship, how the country was running. And that Woodrow Wilson.
Oh yeah. One of the worst presidents
and one of the most racist presidents, by the way.
Yeah, look at his party.
Democrat.
Demon crap.
Resegregated the military.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't like black people so much.
Mm-mm.
But Trump's the most racist president we've ever had, right? The guy was like a pro-segregation fucking, yeah. Well, he's a big piece of shit, and the amendments that were passed in his era were mostly terrible. That's where we got the income tax. We got the Federal Reserve. We got, direct election of popular election of senators.
The first half,
another house.
The first half of the 20th century was one of the worst, for the country in terms of direction. And quite honestly, the last half of the 19th century, not a great time either. Just those, let's say 1860 to 1945, 1950, in the wake of World War II, just terrible time for what happened to our country, the direction that we started taking. And then you get into the 60s and it gets even worse. So, but I'm talking about in terms of turning the corner. That's when all that stuff started happening with Wilson, with Roosevelt, the second Roosevelt. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. I'm not a big fan of Teddy either, but
speaking of which, the second Roosevelt, like one of the topics is socialist insecurity. But before we get into that, let me ask you this. Did we just discuss conservatives, or do we need to expand on that? Like, what does that even mean? I'd like to expand. Is it the way you behave on social media or not behave that makes you that? What does it even mean?
I think it's social media driven, and I think it's one of the problems that I think the right has right now is we have too many of our own low information voters.
Low IQ
and
voters. Yeah.
I think that social media, particularly Twitter, because of a short format, but definitely, also Facebook, everything ends up just boiling down to these meaningless words and terms like cuck-servatives. Like, okay, what is a cuck-servative? Like Kevin McCarthy is a cuck-servative. Like, well, he's got like an 80% rating, I think, at Heritage. I mean, he's certainly not a liberal. He's less liberal than John Boehner. Is it because of the way that they govern, or the votes that they're taking? Or is it just like everybody who's not pro my guy, aka, Cult 45?
Cult 45.
Cult
yeah.
45. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is therefore a cuck. And I touched upon a little earlier the idea, like, we have to be a little bit pragmatic and realistic about our expectations. And this idea and this idea that, like, we have a 5-vote majority in the House of Representatives. We don't have the Senate, and we don't have the presidency.
It is not a mandate.
It is not a mandate. And you don't, like, getting 218 people to agree on a bill is pretty difficult. I would say that the Republicans or the Democrats are much better at just, holding their noses and voting for shit than Republicans are.
Mm-hmm.
They have a much tighter control of their caucus than the Republicans. The Republicans are they're actually a more diverse caucus when it comes to thought.
Yeah, and I think on the Republican side, it's called a caucus, isn't it?
Yeah. But this idea that, like, and it really came to me when it came down to this battle over who was going to be Speaker of the House.
Oh, shit.
And the shit is like, look, you don't have the Senate, you don't have the White House, and they just passed a goddamn omnibus bill that took away the power of the purse for the next, like, 9 months. So, like, you have no leverage. Does it really, like, if you're expecting some massive amount of legislation that actually is going to pass, that's going to be conservative in nature, like, you're out of your goddamn mind. Like, it might pass the House of Representatives, and the Senate won't even take it up. It won't even get a vote on the floor of the Senate because the Democrats control the Senate. So they're not even going to put up those bills. So, like, you could pass a constitutional, or you could pass a bill for term limits, right? And even if you manage to get it past the House of Representatives, you think it's going to pass the Senate? Nope. It's a show vote. It's pointless. You have to win where you can, take action where you can. The focus should be on investigations. And that's not to say the fight wasn't worthless, because they got some good concessions when it came to budgets, how they're going to work the budgets. They're going to actually try and pass the regular 12 appropriation bills, which is how the budget should work. Omnibuses should never happen, and neither should continuing resolutions. That's just passing the buck and rubber stamping garbage budgets. And it completely, like, look, Congress's only leverage over the executive branch is budget. They have investigatory powers, but they don't have prosecutorial powers.
Mm-hmm.
They can try and impeach, but who are you impeaching that's going to get by a Senate that's controlled by Democrats?
Yeah,
even if you manage to pass articles of impeachment in a House of Representatives with a 5-vote majority, that means if, like, a couple people are sick that day, it ain't passing. Like, they all have to be in town and all have to be present for the vote and be able to vote. Like, so have some realistic expectations. What do we want from Congress? Just basically to stop the crazy bills. That's all we need from Congress right now for the next 2 years. You're not going to get any massive right-wing legislation through the Congress anyway. So what do? You just stop them from passing garbage bills that they've been passing and trying to put, like the omnibus bill, but, like, even, like, their voting act, their bill to any chance to expand the Supreme Court, like, that's all you need to do is just stop that crap, because you don't have the power really to do anything else.
Okay, doing what you're doing, yeah, you described all that, makes sense, but why you do it is so that when 2024 comes around, you don't lose ground. You need to show that you're doing something, right? So you energize the base so that when the other seats come up 2 years from now, you're getting even more. But if you squander it and you dick around, and you don't make a showing, right? And that doesn't mean standing up and saying, I vote for Trump as Speaker of the House.
Right.
Right? It's actually doing something. It's quite frankly giving them a taste of their own medicine. It's taking everything they've done and shoving it up their ass is what it's doing. And showing
that's the purpose of the show votes. And that's fine. But I'm talking about the expectations from the us, the public, of Republicans in Congress. So yes, have your show votes, but understand understand that like none of this shit's going to pass anyway.
No.
So don't expect them to actually be able to accomplish things other than kind of one, stop the Biden agenda. Two, you can have your votes. Like they just did one, I think today, that was great. It was the Born Alive bill. They got all the Democrats to vote in unison to say that they are against legislation to provide medical care to a baby that is born and outside of the womb alive to a botched abortion. Meaning like the baby was managed to get all the way out without having its poor little head crushed.
That screenshot,
and they got every Democrat to go
there,
like,
guys.
no,
That screenshot material showing that roll call.
Yes. That's good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of show votes you want. But understand that like that's not going to pass. It's not even going to be taken up in the Senate.
No.
So don't expect the Republicans to be like, well, they didn't do anything. Well, they don't have the power to do anything, guys. And just because they don't get the stuff passed doesn't mean that they ain't trying or that they're not conservative or that they're not conservative enough.
I just came up with an idea that I'm going to tell you about backstage later. It's a good idea, but no, really, I did. But yeah, as soon as Trump kind of turned on DeSantis, what was that, about 2-3 months ago? Then you saw a lot of the Colt 45ers doing the same thing. And,
oh, he's establishment. He's a,
yeah, all of a sudden, even
he's
though he's the opposite, right, of established.
Like, look what he's doing in Florida. I think his record speaks for itself. Like,
look what
Jesus
he did to
Christ.
Disney. Look what he did to Disney. Just said,
I want him to do more.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. But we want them all to do more of what we want, right? And less of less of most of what they want to do. But point is, I think that based on his successes, right? He has a record to go on. He has the momentum. And think about this. If there is a duking contest in the primaries and he's able to take out Trump, he'll have even more momentum, right?
Yeah. I think the other side's pretty afraid.
But hold on a minute. You got to ask yourself this: when you actually get to November 2024, do the Colt 45ers stay home?
That's what I'm afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
I think that his decision to run again,
out of pure spite,
his decision to even run has really kind of screwed us in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think there are a lot of Colt 45ers who will just not show up for DeSantis.
Right.
So DeSantis is going to be in a position that Hillary found herself in with Bernie Bros.
And let me tell you guys something. People, the Colt 45ers that do that, if they do it, they're no better than the people they criticized in 2016 and 2020 for not showing up because they were voting their conscience. And hey, Trump does bad stuff.
The never Trumpers. Yeah.
He married a lady that takes certain kinds of photos and stuff like that. He's a bad guy. Yeah, like Bill Kristol, right? By the way, I haven't seen you quote tweet him in a long time, but those were great that you did.
The thing is he doesn't show up on my feed anymore. So I just don't even see him because of course I don't follow. I doubt it. I think back in like October, November, the algorithm or how the feeds worked in Twitter, I think changed between now and then dramatically, and Twitter very much now favors the people that you follow versus the topics that you follow. And I think that algorithm change has done a lot. I would have to probably
here's an impression of his avatar on Twitter. It's like this uncomfortable smile, like, gosh,
he's such a smug little fuck. I want to punch him. He just always looks so goddamn smug.
Remember him on Special Report every night.
Oh, he was awful too. Like he was never good.
No.
I never liked him.
Yeah, crowd put him in his place almost every night.
Yes. he was such a beltway
smarmy.
Smarmy little there's a cuck-servative.
Yeah.
That's a cuck-servative.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That
his freaking magazine went out of business, guys.
Yeah. And he's bitter about it. Trust me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you think is one of the impetuses of his change? The idea with like the whole Trump thing though is, well, he was a never Trumper, but we can't replace never Trumpers with only Trumpers.
Yep.
Like only Trumpers are just as bad as never Trumpers. Like vote the issues, vote the top of the ticket. That's, I mean, like you can stay at home and lose, I guess, but like, okay, then accept where the country's going to go.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you look at what happened after 2016 with Hillary and Bernie, right? What did the Democrat Party do? What changed? Well, they were unified against Trump. You didn't have another election until 2020. Bernie stayed out of 2020, notice. He didn't gain traction. And the Democrat Party buried the Green Party.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Suddenly the Green Party wasn't even on half the ballots anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They just up and disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
Weird. They got ready for 2020. They were unified, in a common cause against Trump because they really didn't expect him to win in 2016. They were very irritated by it. And they made the changes necessary. Like I find it really weird that the Green Party just literally disappeared off the ballots in 2020.
But guess what stayed on the ballots for the most part?
Stupid big L's.
Yes.
Worthless candidates, worthless people, worthless party.
Mm-hmm. Make it legal, man.
Yeah, they're the whole world's falling apart, and their top issue is fucking pot.
Mm-hmm.
And
You're doing it anyway. You're doing it anyway, guys.
Yeah.
So what's the fucking point?
Well, the other issue is like if that's your top priority and things like that, I think you need to get your head evaluated.
You know what I just realized?
Hmm.
We got to do like a stream on Colorado.
Yes.
And how that was like the worst decision that state could have made, and any other state that decides.
Well, now they're going further because I think they did that ballot initiative this year to, I think, shrooms. I think they're legalizing shrooms, aren't they? I'll have to look it up.
I don't know, but
they're going further. They're doing more drugs.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think like you look at Colorado and like I think terrible decision. I think the most terrible decision that a state's ever made is Georgia. Throwing money, stuffing the fucking whores of Hollywood's little G strings with billions maybe not billions, but hundreds of millions of dollars of tax credits. Now look, I'm in favor of states going, okay, look, if you move your company here, we're not going to destroy you if you build a facility with property taxes. We're going to give you a break on property taxes. If you construct this massive manufacturing facility, like we're not going to charge you the regular rate we want you to build here because right now it's an empty field giving us no tax revenue. That's one thing, but to give credits, literally pay the company wads of cash to the point where they're paying negative taxes, essentially, which is I'm fundamentally opposed with negative taxes in all forms for all people, period, across the board, companies, individuals. Negative taxes should never, ever exist.
You know why?
You didn't pay it, you don't get a refund.
It's wealth redistribution.
Of course it is. It's theft from one group and bribing another.
Yes.
It's disgusting. I hate negative taxes.
But
Georgia literally handed Hollywood a bunch of money to move to their state. Like, hey, we're a red state. You know what we should do? We should go find the industry with the highest concentration of blue people and pay them to move here and vote in our elections. That's a good idea. Fucking dumb. You want to know why fucking Georgia's a blue state now? There you go.
Carpetbaggers.
They literally bribed Hollywood to go move there. And so they did. And guess where they vote? I highly suspect they vote in both states, to be honest with you, but they're voting in Georgia, and they're certainly voting in Georgia during the runoffs.
It's not just, Hollywood stuff. A lot of these states, Montana, Idaho turning purple, Texas turning purple, because they're attracting these people, right? I'm
Austin
like, don't
Texas.
come. Hey, what was that? Kamala Harris, don't come.
Yeah.
Like,
that was Trump
stay
saying,
where you're at. Fix your own.
Oh no, yeah, the video like, don't come. Oh, I'm gonna come. I love those videos. Those little mashups.
Yeah, EVS will play those a lot. But
those are great.
But the point is, like, unless you're gonna, here's what happens, and we've talked about this before. You're living in California, right? And you're like, man, I hate living here. I think I'm a conservative. So you move to Texas. Then you get there and you're like, hey, my city doesn't have this service or that service. I'm going to go to the city council meeting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you start voting for aldermen, council members, whatever they call them in your
school boards,
municipality. Yeah, and then you elect these shitheads, and then suddenly you're like, oh, the state level, this guy wants to do this, I'm voting for him. And then suddenly you're flipping the state purple and eventually blue. So unless you actually know what the state's about, then stay where you're at or move to another state that's not already that is already blue, and don't fuck with some of the other states. That's the point of a republic.
What you don't do if you're a red state is incentivize entire industries that are super dominantly left wing.
Mm-hmm.
You don't pay, like, if they move to your state without incentives, there's not much really you can do about that. You're going to take the tax revenue and the jobs, whatever.
Yeah.
But you certainly aren't going to pay, like, don't fucking pay them.
Yeah.
To come to your state, for God's sakes. Don't be stupid. And that goes for like the tech industry too. It'd be like, hey, we would love you to move your headquarters to Texas, but you can't bring any of your employees with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Hire all new
ones. Fire them all in San Francisco and hire people in Texas. And if they want to move, that's fine. But
I don't know why it's so funny. The commie type.
Yeah, I don't know why the colors are associated the way they are. I'm sure there's some historical significance to red and blue, Republican, Democrat, or left, right. But
yeah.
But I hate what Atlanta did.
Yeah.
Or Georgia did. Like, you literally paid the worst people in the world to come move to your state. Mm-hmm. They didn't just move there on their own. You literally paid the worst people in the worst industry, the most depraved, disgusting people on the planet, Hollywood. You paid them to move to your state. That would be like Greg Abbott in Texas busing homeless people from San Francisco to San Antonio.
Yep.
That's the level of stupid that Georgia did. And they can't undo it now.
Mm-hmm.
Georgia's going to be blue.
Forever.
I think so. I think the only reason that they have a Republican governor, and he beat Stacey Abrams. Because Stacey Abrams is a terrible candidate.
And a terrible person.
Who was like, and there's that awful picture with her sitting there, showing off her field goal posts in a classroom with no mask.
What about Star Trek though?
Oh yeah, she's the president of Earth in Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's just not a likable candidate, period. And like, I think that helped. And then of course incumbents have an advantage as well. Particularly
Yes.
in state offices, they have an advantage because they have the press that they can leverage as incumbents, and the apparatus of the state that they can leverage.
Right.
They're in positions to be able to bribe the populace, where the candidate just promises, or the challenger just promises things the other person can literally bribe. And the bribes do happen on the Republican side too. Like I said, like we're a lot of conservatives are very fond about, of building, $1 billion palaces for asshole athletes to play in. We love doing that shit because, oh, look, it's going to bring all this money to the economy.
I'll tell you something.
Never actually materializes.
Any Republican who voted for that bill in Georgia, that's a conservative.
There you go. Like, oh, look at all the money we can get. We'll bring in all this industry and we'll bring in the film industry. Like, let California continue to do what California does.
Well, like, or
let them go to Toronto.
Where I live, anytime they announce like, hey, something's being filmed here, it's like I don't cheer it. In fact, I boo for it. So don't care, don't want it here. Get the fuck out.
Yeah, but for God's sakes, don't incentivize. Like, again, the industry is going to move where industry moves. I think you need in order to incentivize businesses to move to your state, the things you need to do is have a well-operating state, meaning that it's run effectively and efficiently and has a good regulatory climate, a favorable business climate, favorable property laws, favorable consumer protection laws, just favorable laws in general for people to conduct business, and people will move their businesses to where it's favorable if where their current location is unfavorable.
Hang on.
Stop paying people. Like, I don't like this idea of giving them tax credits into bribing them to moving places.
Hang on, watch this.
What you guys need to do, guys, what you need to do is invite my company to your state, and I will make movies there because I'm with Daily Wire, and we make movies now.
Start getting Shapiro, to come to your state and make movies.
They're not really making too many movies, are they?
No,
they had a couple. They're not really cranking them out. I don't think that they've garnered the level, because they really weren't that good of movies. I mean, let's just be honest.
Well, not only that, but again, we've talked about this, and this is the political stream and channel, but everything crosses over. The reason that all these movies are being watched still, despite everyone hating Disney and all that stuff, is because you want to be part of the conversation, right?
Yep.
You want to go to work.
If you're missing
did you
out.
see Top Gun Maverick? No, I didn't. Did you watch any football? No. What'd you do? Oh, I read a book. And I went live on YouTube. It's like, how many people can you talk to about that kind of stuff? But the point is, you want to be part of the conversation. Well, how many people really saw these movies, right? These, whatever you want to call them, alternative media movies. Some people have, and you talk about it, but once you're done, it's like, okay, well, where's the next one?
They don't really become part of the culture.
Yeah.
Like nobody's talking about, Terror on the Prairie as in some a significant movie of the year.
Right. And for all I know, if you like that type of movie, kind of seems like a Lifetime type of movie, then hey, maybe that's your thing.
I'm sure it's fine, but it's not great. It's not going to draw the big audience.
Right.
Look, I admire Daily Wire for trying, and I hope they continue to try. Because I think that is like, you have to have an alternative. I wish we didn't. I wish people would just be like, you know what? Let's just not watch movies for a year. See what happens.
Yeah, I mean, fuck, guys. You have, where are we at now? Like 100 years of movies to watch.
Yeah.
I was asking on social media about where do I put all my Blu-rays and DVDs that if I started watching one a night, I may be good for like the year, right? So there you go. keep your
Netflix for the
streaming service
services
and watch
too.
stuff on
Like-
there. Yeah.
Like, you know, you have Hulu, great. Well, Disney's the majority owner.
Yep.
I mean, so you have to make those decisions, and you have to understand what those, you know, decisions entail. Like, if you have Hulu, like, you know, just not seeing one or two Disney movies is like, well, you're still giving Disney a lot of money. If you have cable TV, circle back to that, you're giving Disney $5 every month, at least. I mean, that's just ESPN alone. That's not the Disney Channel. That's not any of their networks. And like, oh, you don't like CBS? Well, you're paying for Nickelodeon. That's Viacom. You're paying for MTV. You're paying for all that shit. And then you're also paying the carriage fees. One of the worst channels for carriage fees is actually the local channels.
I got to share
Fuck
this
the
really
local
quick.
channels.
Yeah, I don't care about him. This is very timely. Just came out about 1 minute ago. Razorfist says, I apply the same metric to the war in Ukraine that I do to everything else. If I find myself in agreement with John McCain on any given issue, there's an 11 in 10 chance it's designed to mercilessly fuck future generations.
Hey, fucking man.
What a great...
He's an Arizonian too, isn't he?
Yes. Yeah.
In my lifetime, John McCain is like is like my most hated fucking. I just can't stand him.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's John McCain is a fucking cuck-servative. Because here's the problem with the show votes, and here's where show votes can kind of bite you in the ass. You can have a lot of show votes, so you can get your percentage record up. You know, Heritage or other conservative think tanks and everything compile your record on your votes and be like, well, look, I voted for this bill. I voted for it when I knew it wouldn't pass.
Mm-hmm.
John McCain was great at voting for things that he knew wouldn't pass. But when it came down to be the deciding vote, he fucked the party every fucking time. He was the first cocksucker to walk across the aisle and go suck a D-dick.
Mm-hmm.
Every time.
A showing of it too.
And make a showing of it and be proud of it.
Mm-hmm.
McCain-Feingold, garbage bill. Designed to empower legacy media and unions.
And to censor people, to be quite frank.
And
That's
to
what
censor
McCain-Feingold did. Yes.
Terrible bill. Feingold was a Wisconsin senator, so I'm very familiar with that. He was very proud of that. I loved it when he got his ass kicked in an election. That was so great when he got voted out.
I remember back in the day, my old blog, Hard to Starboard, like I talked about McCain-Feingold several times.
Yes. Citizens United was absolutely the right decision.
Mm-hmm.
To limit that. Like, and you know, like what is the legacy of the McCain-Feingold campaign finance reform bill? I'm a piece of shit and I approve this method. That's what we got.
Yeah.
They added like 2 seconds to every fucking commercial. I'm a cocksucker and I approve this method. Oh, what a great reform that was.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it was like he was the first to cave on every possible fucking issue when it came to like, that's his idea of reaching across the aisle, was not to gain concessions from the other side. It was like McCain negotiated with the Democratic Party the way like Obama and Biden negotiate with Iran.
Yeah,
what do you want? We'll do whatever you want. Just sign this. We'll do anything. Just please sign this. Please sign this.
Just don't talk about Obamacare.
Yeah, I'll never forget that little thumbs down raspberry he gave. Fucker deserved to die.
Unbelievable.
For that reason alone. Glad he got cancer. Glad he's dead.
Oh, man.
I don't hold that much contempt for a lot of politicians because I have pretty low expectations of most of them. But that motherfucker, I hated. And if you watched him on committees, like he would go on these, because these publicized committees are all usually a joke, especially in the Senate, because they'll haul some CEO in front of there and they'll wag their fingers and nothing happens. They just want to grandstand in front of the cameras and look tough. Be like, oh, look at the dressing down I gave this Mark Zuckerberg in this committee meeting. Like, oh, good. What came of it? Oh, nothing. But he'd be up there and it'd be talking about things like, cryptocurrencies, encryption, technology things. And he'd be like, oh, shucks, I'm just an old fucker who doesn't know anything. And he's like, he was proud of being an ignorant old fuck.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then get off the committee if that's what the committee's covering, you piece of shit. If you don't know anything about it, learn or get the fuck out of there. Like, but his whole thing was like, he was the aw shucks Republican. I can't, and Romney's the same kind of Republican. Is just the aw shucks Republican. Aw shucks, I'm an idiot.
Oh man, Romney's like
useless.
He's the you look
That's
at
a conservative
dictionary.
Right
yeah, and there's a picture of him. Yep.
Weak, meek, feeble, and caves.
Mm-hmm. And pegged.
And he's in a state that should be like hard red.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most inexcusable part of it. Like, I expect Susan Collins to be not my kind of senator because she's from basically a blue state, Maine, right? So I don't expect a whole lot of a Republican that gets elected in Maine. I'd rather have her than the Democrat. So, like, I understand when the way she votes, the way she does, but for fucking Romney and to have a Romney type in a freaking hard red state, unacceptable. Primary that piece of shit the fuck out of there.
Yeah.
Because when it comes down to it, he's not going to vote on your side. He voted to impeach Trump. He was one of the people that caved on this recent omnibus bill. He'll cave on everything because he's weak. He's an aw shucks Republican. The Republicans that I consider conservatives, I'm going to circle back to it, particularly, and McCain was God. He did this in spades. It was the kind of Republicans that wanted to be friends with the anchors on CNN and MSNBC.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like if they're buddy with those motherfuckers, and like it seems like their voting record and the things that they say is designed to appease those people, because they always think it'd be like, well, if I just do this and this, they'll like me. No, they won't. And McCain was a perfect example, right? Oh, he ran against Obama. He was a Nazi. In 2008, you're not going to get on their side. They will kill you any chance they can.
He bent the knee. Yeah.
You don't bend the knee, and you don't try and curry favor with the press. You're just they are the enemy.
Well, what people forget, Melissa, is in Massachusetts, he instituted like Obamacare Light.
Yeah, Obamacare was
before.
Romneycare before it was Obamacare.
Mm-hmm. And don't forget, like, this is when I first started getting really jaded by National Review when they endorsed him out of all. Remember that huge field of Republican primary candidates that year? There was shit. You had Giuliani, you had McCain, you had Romney, you had Paul, you had, what was the actor's name that wound up being this big dud that they said was the next Reagan? Fred Thompson. You there? You're muted, Greg. Fred Thompson. You had seems like there were one or two more, because on my blog at the time I did like a rundown of all the different ones. And I think I was trying to think of who I was throwing my support behind at the time, but then in a shocking turn of events, it winds up being McCain. It's like, how the hell does that happen?
I'll tell you
how the hell does that happen?
Mike fucking Huckabee.
Yep, that was another one. Yes. It was
That's
him.
how. Huckabee stayed in a race he had zero chance of winning to divide the South and deprive who was the other front runner against Romney against McCain at the time? Maybe it was Romney. But in 2008, Huckabee stayed in to protect McCain.
And don't forget,
he's the same kind of piece of shit as McCain.
Yes, don't forget some of the stuff he's done. Huckabee coming out against opposing
like
Iran.
his daughter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but coming out against opposing Iran, stuff like that. It's like, guys, all we have to do is talk to them and make peace. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? These people are psychos. They're killing their own people, you dumbass.
Yeah,
he's
like
terrible.
and look
Just
at like
across the board. But hey, go get his guitar out and play you a tune.
Who's that garbage person in Arkansas? Who's the governor? Is it Arkansas or is it Louisiana? Is one of them that's just a complete fucking rhino, like vetoed bills to protect women's sports. God, what's his name?
Yeah, that's down in Louisiana. I can't think of the guy's name. Mm-hmm.
That's another one. Beware. That's a.
Yeah, and I brought this up before because inevitably, I think it's kind of like a rule that anytime we have a stream, McCain comes up. Thanks a lot, Razorfist, for making that tweet just totally randomly while we're on the stream. But I brought this up before. There was this one scene.
Oh, it's Huckabee Sanders. It's now the governor of Arkansas.
Okay. Well, in any event, there was this scene from, I think, somewhere in Oklahoma where McCain was on the trail in 2008. And this black conservative, gets the mic and he's like, sir. And he did this. He's like, I'm begging you. He's like, there's so much stuff you can go after with Obama. He's like, you have to do it. All this stuff was coming about what he did in college and
Jeremiah Wright. Yeah, the pastor.
So yeah, what a piece of shit. So he walks out. McCain walks out into the aisle, shakes the guy's hand, and has this closed mouth smile and just nods. The next day, guess what he does? He continues kissing the ass of his opponent.
Yep.
That's when I'm like, am I even going to show up to the polls that day? What am I voting for?
McCain, there's so many things that bug me about McCain, and there's other Republicans that do this too. And that, I would say, you want to talk about what a real conservative is, it'd be like, it's the ones that don't even want power. They just want to complain.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think McCain even really wanted the presidency. He just wanted the prestige of running.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't really want to lead the country, because if you look at McCain's history and his demeanor over time, he loved being out of power, because then he could run to CNN. The most dangerous spot in Washington, D.C. was standing in between McCain and a camera. That's the worst spot to be, because he's going to run you over. Well, probably not. He probably just, hit you, fall down, and go, my arms.
Well, the most dangerous spot now, right? It's between him it's between his daughter and any kind of device that has a social media application on it.
Yeah.
That's the most dangerous place to be right now, because she will grab that thing and make a post about her father. So,
yeah. And what it just bothered me that you were just, God, you seem so when your party controlled the Senate, the first thing you did was run to the Democrats to go make deals.
Mm-hmm.
And he really did seem happier when he was out of power, because then he could just complain, especially when they didn't have the presidency. So when the Republicans weren't president, he could just run to CNN and complain about, this department doing this. And of course, there wasn't a place on earth McCain didn't want boots on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
He was pro invade everybody all the time, forever and ever. Just a terrible politician, a terrible person. And another thing that bothered me about him, and this bothers me in a number of categories, is that we put certain professions on a pedestal and act as if like that profession then gives you lifetime immunity from any consequences of all the rest of your actions combined.
Mm-hmm.
So like, okay, yes, he was a war hero, right? He served the armed military, and like that's respect. I respect that, and I appreciate that. But that doesn't give you a lifetime pass to do whatever you want for the rest of your life. You're still accountable for your positions. You're accountable for your actions, even if you served. And that goes for nurses, it goes for teachers, it goes for policemen, it goes for firemen, it goes for all these lauded professions now. Oh, and now trainers, because back to the NFL thing, it'd be like, oh, these trainers are sacrosanct. It'd be like, I'm pretty sure they're getting paid a fuck ton of money to be there. And the fact that they did CPR on a guy is like, okay, they did their job. That's in a completely safe environment with zero risk to them. They performed the job that they were paid to do, that they get paid a lot of money. Where 99% of the time they literally just stand on the sidelines and watch the game. I'm sorry, that's not a hero.
Mm-mm.
You're not a hero. If you have zero risk to yourself and you go perform CPR on a guy when it's your fucking job to go perform CPR on a guy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, oh God. It's so, and people reacted to that Packer player who pushed him, which was an insanely stupid penalty. And yes, the guy's going to get fined, and he got ejected from the game for it because it was a stupid thing. But like really, that's, we're going to be up in arms about that. It's like people who get mad about a social media person, throwing their cat over their head. It'd be like, that's or the guy that shot the lion in Africa. It'd be like, he's the worst person in the whole wide world. It'd be like, really? Because I'm pretty sure there's every 5 minutes a worse person does a worse thing to a person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I'm not going to get up in arms about somebody who mistreats a cat. I don't think cats should be mistreated, but I like people more. I value, I don't like people more. I value human life more than animal life.
Mm-hmm.
So meanwhile, there's, people are getting slaughtered all over the continent of fucking Africa. I'm not going to give a shit about a goddamn fucking lion.
Right. Even if it's
fuck
Cecil?
The stupid lion. I don't care.
Even if it's Cecil?
Even if it's Cecil. I'm going to save my moral outrage and indignation for people who do actual bad things to other people.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's what a conservative is. For now, we're really looking at probably DeSantis as the front runner, at least in my book. We'll see what happens, though. Oh,
I mean, we're
Jock
a long
Nerdy,
ways off. But
the retro respectives in the house. What's up, Jock Nerdy?
Of all the potential people running, I would say he would get my vote. By the way, I didn't vote for Trump in the 2016 primary.
Me neither.
I voted for Ted Cruz.
As well. Yeah, me too. Mm-hmm. Cruz was great. Great.
I like Ted Cruz more than I like Trump personally. But he's got a pretty high negative because they made very sure to try and destroy that rising star, the press, as fast as they could.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, oh my God, we cannot have a Republican catch fire that looks like Ted Cruz.
Right.
Can't have that.
Yeah, they said that. Yeah.
Can't have that.
They said that. So here's something else, Greg, what a conservative is. Anytime you refuse to vote for something out of the fear of the backlash because it's something like a sacred cow such as Social Security, or as I call it, socialist insecurity. So hold on a minute. We don't want to go into an hour-long discussion here because it's getting late, but do you remember what happened when they tried some reform? What was that, like in 06? Or was it right after Bush's inauguration in 05, maybe.
I mean, for as long as I can remember, they've done the, Republicans are going to throw grandma off a cliff, but they literally did a commercial with Paul Ryan throwing grandma off a cliff. They actually literally did a commercial, he had wheeled grandma up to the edge of a cliff and flipped her off.
Well, this is the one that where it was like, hey,
it was Bush administration.
We're going to give you the option of
the opt out.
Yeah, no, it was divert the funds to more like an investment type thing.
Yeah, like an IRA type of thing.
Mm-hmm. And then they used that, and then publications like National Review blamed that whole thing on why things went south for the GOP in 2008 and 2012. But it's one of those things, guys. Here's what socialist insecurity is. And we've talked about this before on the show. It's one of those things where once you start it, it's there forever, because then the Democrats and some Republicans can use it, right, as something to say, hey, here's this entitlement. If you don't vote for me, you're going to lose this. You're not going to get this anymore. And it's not just that. They do it with other welfare programs. Think about, the Obama phone, all that type stuff. They can say, hey, if you don't vote for me, then I'm going to take this away from you. We're going to throw grandma off a cliff, like Greg just said. So it's one of those things that it'll probably never go away, because it's used as it's holding the electorate hostage is what it's doing. It's kind of unfair. It's almost like any program like that should have a sunset date. It should be like constitutional that anytime you institute some kind of spending like that, it's never a permanent program. That way you can't use it as political capital, right? Because hey, if they said 19 what year did that pass? 35, I think. Because that was again an FDR thing. If they said if they said in 35 this is happening, but it's only good for 20 years. It has to be reaffirmed, right? Well, then they could run on the basis that, hey, vote for me or else you won't have the people in Washington that are going to renew this, right? But at the same time, it would be expiring on its own. It wouldn't be, hey, you're voting to take it away. You're actively saying, I'm taking this away. But the forefathers did a lot of great stuff, but they didn't have the foresight to think that anything like that could happen, where you set up this permanent entitlement program that would be used to lure the electorate into voting a certain way forever.
Yeah, and
that's what's happened.
People would be like, well, since you paid in, you deserve your money paid out. So
yeah,
that was the extra hook with Social Security versus other entitlements. But
yeah, but do you know how, like, if you're some old guy that you've been doing a pretty respectable working class job your whole life and you retire, do you know how soon after retirement you run through the money that you contributed? Is it when you turn 90?
It's
pretty fast.
It's inflation adjusted, and then of course, you look at what you contributed versus there's other components of it too. Like my grandparents, bless their souls, were of course. I mean, it created a generation of people that were just ardent, FDR fans. They were one of them, and they were like, "Well, we paid in," and it's like, okay. Let's take what you actually paid in based on the salary that you made and the tax rates at the time, because the majority of their working life, because of when they were born, they didn't pay shit. Social Security taxes went up in the 80s, the payroll tax rate. They were paying at a much lower rate, and then you factor in how much Medicaid money that they blew through.
Right.
They didn't contribute 10% of what they even factoring in investments. I think they took out way the fuck more than they ever got.
Yeah,
and that's why there's some things there's some taxes that I think should exist, and I think one of them is the inheritance tax to a degree, and that is like at the end of your life, if what you've paid in is less than what you were paid, what you cost, then the difference should be taxable or come right off whatever assets you have before your inheritors get anything. Because what happened is what we did is we created this weird world where like you could send grandma and grandpa off to the nursing home instead of what traditionally Americans did a lot of times back in the olden days was they actually took care of their elders in home when they could. Obviously, if it was a dramatic medical circumstance, they couldn't.
Right.
But they took care of their elders in home. They send grandma and grandma off to the nursing home where they'll accumulate enormous Medicaid expenses. And then, the sons and daughters would inherit the house free of any inheritance tax. It's like, well, I don't think that's fundamentally fair, because like if you cost more than you paid in, to me you owe a debt. You don't, and that debt should be paid before your inheritors get anything. That's that's not a very popular position, but I think that would be fundamentally the most fair thing.
Right.
Exempting like a certain dollar amount for particular heirlooms. You could put like some couple $1,000 exemption, be like, okay, grandma's jewelry or something. But things with like houses and things like that, if you were a net cost and you voted your entire life for the policies that resulted in you being a net cost, like who ultimately should pay the bill for Social Security, Medicare? The people that used it and the people who voted for it all these years. Because what you get is the boomer generation's like, well, I paid in. Well, so I should get my money out. And it's like, well, even if it's insolvent, and be like, well, yeah, because I paid in. And they're like, oh, so the next generation should pay for all the policies that you voted for yourself. Just fuck the next generation then. That's what you're saying.
Well, speaking of the next generation, another option would be like from that episode Half a Life, where you have to commit suicide at 60, then the problem goes away, right?
That was a really good episode to start.
No, it was. Yeah, it's like the only acceptable episode with Loaxana Troy, period.
She did really good in that episode.
Welcome to Off the Treks, everyone.
Yeah. That was one of those good ones where like you could take a general issue like euthanasia.
Right.
And the ethics behind it and the moral implications of it. And it was applied in a way that was very equal in that episode. Like the side of Loaxana who was in love with the guy who was going to do the suicide pact thing because that's what his people did. Like she was adamantly against it because she was in love with the guy and she couldn't see reasons. She was like, there's no good reason. You're healthy. Like this is insane. But then the other side would be like, well, these are our traditions and these are important to me.
Right.
And it doesn't matter that you don't think it's right. I do. I'm willing to do this thing. It wasn't heavy-handed. It was like, and you left the episode kind of going, oh God, I can kind of see both sides of that.
Yeah, and it didn't have a happy ending.
Euthanasia, but no, it didn't have a. Yeah, it was a good episode.
Right.
Now, I have always felt like the generation that should pay for the burden is the generation that benefited, not the ones that are to come that aren't going to benefit.
Well, and I've seen on social media like the other day that what brought up this topic was that stupid trending hashtag. Do you remember what it was?
I don't know.
Whatever the fuck it was. It was about Social Security. So here's where I see a lot of arguments that no, guys, and even Reagan made this argument. And again, Reagan is, we think of him as this like conservative model,
like
right?
The alpha conservative, right?
Yeah, this best in class example. But he really wasn't, and he also wasn't a huge, gigantic friend of the Second Amendment either, an ally of it. But in any event, I hear people make this argument that, guys, it's not like other stuff because it's a regressive tax, right? But here's the thing. If you're born into a family, let's say, where you're a billionaire, right? Let's say, Elon Musk has kids. You don't need Social Security ever, right? So why can't you opt out?
Right.
The fact that you can't opt out means that the government is forcing you to contribute to a service that you may never use. And that was basically the argument against Obamacare when they took it to court. And there were similar arguments back in 1935, 36, 37 against Social Security, but they all got shot down. Supreme Court on one of them, and then I think the other one was like in a state somewhere where they got shot down. And I hate seeing decisions like this because just because a bunch of men in black voted a certain way, right, doesn't mean that it's right. Because you look at their arguments and they say stuff like the fact that the country needs a program like this, and we're the only country in the Western world and half of the Eastern hemisphere that doesn't have a program like this, isn't a compelling argument not to have it. Yeah, but that's not what you're deciding, douchebag. You're telling us whether or not it's constitutional. That's your only job, is to interpret law and how it applies, right, to the Constitution. Yes. But you see a lot of these decisions written with that argument that, this is for the general welfare of the nation and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's not a good argument. 7 out of 10 of you voted a certain way. That's why it's happening. And it happens at the state Supreme Court level, federal system, counties, wherever you go. And that's what happened with this. And now it's here forever. Just because it's a regressive tax.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's politically untenable to try and dismantle it in any way.
Yes.
Or even reform it.
Yeah, but the fact that you can't opt out, and same thing with healthcare. Like, if you make enough money, it's better to probably pay cash for any doctor's visits that you have rather than paying into an insurance program that you may never need, right?
Right. Or you carry some extreme major medical.
Yeah.
Like where, if you're very well off, like you can pay cash for, a $200,000 operation. But you might want, $1 million policy, or, you might have an insurance policy with like a $200,000 deductible isn't going to cost very much. So you'd be like, well, I'll use it for the major medicals. But, the states put rules on, what can or what has to be covered in order to qualify as insurance. So,
right.
And now more and more states are going to start putting, cosmetic, transgender surgeries under those regulations as well. A number of states I think already have.
Well, yeah, and I think a lot of the argument for this is that, okay, if we don't do this, right, we're going to wind up with a whole bunch of people that aren't smart enough to have set themselves up for their retirement, and then we have to pay for them anyway. That's what I think the argument is.
Yes.
That goes back. Well, yeah, but that goes back to what I said earlier, that first half of the 20th century is where we really started to slide into a lot of decadence and stuff. It's like, well, let's start teaching people the right way at a young age, that, hey, you're responsible for your own life. You're responsible for your own future. And now it's like, we don't teach that. We teach the opposite. We teach entitlement. We teach dependency. And we don't teach independence and owning your own life.
No. And the thing, like,
I wish I could keep all the money I've contributed to it, to be quite frank.
Oh, it used to be like one of my top issues that got me into politics in general, way back when I was like high school age, because I just started doing the math. You're like, now wait a minute. So like I'm contributing like, what 7.25 at the time with the Medicare tax. In addition to Social Security tax. Social Security, I think, was 6.25 or something to that effect. It changed in the 90s under Bill Clinton, where they removed one of the cap. They significantly raised, I think, the cap for Medicare tax. But I always looked at that and I'm like, wait a minute. If I take my contribution and my employer contribution, that's like 15%, almost 15% of my salary or my wages, and just put it into my own retirement account, like I could do way better than the paltry money that I'm going to get for Social Security. And the idea is when and it always kind of drove me nuts. I'd hear old people say all the time, well, I'm on a fixed income. Well, isn't kind of everybody really?
Yeah.
Like you can say, well, you're not on a fixed income. You could work 2 jobs. You could get a different job. We're like, well, you could work at 68. You could work at 72. Like, yeah, you're not going to be laying railroads down, but like there's other, like you could make more than that.
Walmart greeter.
There you go. Walmart greeter, any number of positions, depending, of course, on your career and your ability. But like this idea, like, well, I'm special, so I'm on a fixed income. Well, like we don't all get to name our wages either, buddy. So like, I don't know, like, why does that make you special versus me? And I always resented the older generations that were so protective of Social Security, because I'm like, look, like every way I do the math, I'm getting screwed on this.
Yeah.
Like there's no math outcome where I'm not getting like royally fucked. Because especially when you start compounding that investment, because I was paying Social Security tax when I was 16 years old, because I had a job when I was 16 years old. Right.
Yeah.
Granted, I wasn't making a whole lot of money at 16 years old, but like you start compounding that early income through the course of your life, that really adds up over time. And the other additional factor is it'd be like, you could pay, like if you paid a shit ton of Social Security all the way up to your 40, our age, like you make it to 46 and you die of a heart attack. Guess where all that money goes? Nowhere. Like if you don't have kids that qualify for SSI,
I'm glad you brought that
all
up.
All that money just goes into a vacuum, gone. Versus if it was in an IRA, that could be my heirs or the person I designate could then benefit the person. I could direct the rewards of my labor to the person I choose.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because another thing that happens with programs like this, they keep expanding, because first it was just okay. At first it wasn't even every worker. Did you know that? Like a bunch of industries were excluded and stuff.
Yep.
And then they called
railroad industry still is.
They called it racist. They said, guess what? A bunch of blacks do those jobs and stuff. So you're racist because you excluded them. So they included those. Then suddenly it's like, wait a minute, family members, survivors and all that, they get the money. Then it's like, wait a minute, now we have to do unemployment insurance. And then in 65, they said, wait a minute, Medicaid and Medicare, right? They keep ballooning and stuff. Yeah. So not only did they not ever go away, they keep expanding. You mentioned earlier the contribution cap removal, right, during the 90s and stuff.
Yeah.
So
and
that's
the rate
what
increase
happens.
in 1990.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm looking at the table right now, actually. Social Security calendar year 1937 to 1949, those people paid 1%. 1%. 1950, 1.5. 1951 to 53, 1.5, and that's when they introduced the employer contribution at an additional 2.25. Then by 1966, it was 3.85. By 70, it was 4.2. By 1980, it was 5.08. This is just your side, not the employer contribution. And by 1990, it became 6.2.
Mm-hmm.
If this was a valid and good program, then why did we need to raise the taxes so much to pay for it?
Yeah.
And they'd be like, well, we did the Social Security lockbox. Oh, Al Gore's lockbox. Again, you can look up the numbers yourself, but you go off budget. Here's Medicare. It's basically, when you look at OMB budget numbers, off budget basically is Medicare and Social Security. So like when there's lockdowns or not lockdowns, but when they don't pass a budget bill and whatever, and they have to,
Sequestration is what you're talking about.
Not sequestration, but when they shut down, government shutdowns,
Yes.
the quote unquote government shutdowns, they always try and tie that into Social Security, and like those things are off budget mandatory spending. They're not part of the normal budgetary process. So they're not at risk whenever the shutdowns. But if you look at the OMB numbers, like the best year was $186 billion surplus. It was 2006, by the way.
Well, and it's government shutdown, except for all the important stuff.
Almost all
Every
of it,
single
yeah.
time, the essential stuff.
Yeah, and then the motherfuckers who like got shut down, like get back pay. That to me is baffling.
Yeah,
Like fuck off with that shit. Like I'm sorry you got bills to pay, but like if you're a Fed, fuck off.
yeah.
Do I get
happens-
back pay for 2 years of COVID lockdown?
Yeah, exactly.
Not-
What
not
happens?
24
What happens in the
At
private
$2,400.
sector? Mm-hmm.
Like you can have unemployment like anybody else, I guess, but like back pay, fuck that shit. But this mysterious lockbox, like you're talking like at best probably would add $2.5 trillion to the fund. But according to OMB numbers here, like the deficit, projected deficit, is going to be like over $100 billion a year by 2024, almost $200 billion by 2027. Because again, that like we're not reproducing. Programs like Social Security require positive population growth, a substantial positive population growth, because that's how all Ponzi schemes work.
Yeah.
You need more people paying in than paying that are getting paid.
Yep.
And our birth rates in this country are not such that we have been able to do that. So we are looking, and the actuaries for these particular programs have been saying for years now, and the debate is just because the numbers of course fluctuate year to year based on payroll taxes and expenditures and things like that. Like, so they're not always accurate, but they've been, 2030, these things are going to start to turn upside down. And they're not going to actually provide positive budget impact. They're going to provide negative budget impact, meaning that their costs are going to start exceeding their revenue. And even with the lockbox that only buys you a few more years, it's still fundamentally insolvent.
Mm-hmm.
The fundamentals are such that it is insolvent. And there's only really two viable ways to make it insolvent: is raise the retirement age or raise the tax rate.
Yep. Which in turn would increase the contribution.
Yes. So you either need more revenue or less cost. You do less cost by making it so that people can't qualify it, so they get a couple years less on the program.
Right.
And hopefully in those couple of years, if you're
and they'd be
morbid type,
contributing
you're
for
going
those
up.
years as well. So
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's your options. But politically, it's like if you even suggest anything to modify these programs in any way. I mean, The Byrd Rule, which is budget reconciliation in the Budget Reconciliation Act, I think of 78 or 76 somewhere. The Budget Reconciliation Act, which allows Congress to do these reconciliation bills to bypass a filibuster. If you don't know, like specifically has like one of the last big items in the Byrd Rule is like can't touch Social Security and Medicare.
Mm-hmm.
So you need, in order to do these reforms, you need to get past filibuster numbers in the Senate. And so Republicans in general, including Trump, were just like, we're not even going to bring it up because it's never going to pass, and the other side is just going to beat us to fucking death with it with the help of the media.
Yeah.
They're just going to say that we're trying to rob old people, and we give money to the rich, and we're screwing old people, and what we really need to do is remove the cap, because Social Security and Medicare, they had caps. Social Security still has a cap. So you pay the Social Security tax up to a particular income, and then you no longer pay the tax. And the reason behind that is because the benefit is fixed. So why wouldn't the payment be? Like, if I can only get like, why should I pay like 20% of my freaking income, let's say, for a program to give me like the equivalent of like 1.5% back? I'm getting screwed then. And it was designed, this program was supposed to be one of those programs that paid for itself. So it shouldn't, theoretically, if it was designed well, it shouldn't need that. And so the only solution is to, of course, raise the tax on and the cap right now, I think, is like 160 some thousand. Because I think it's indexed to inflation. Social Security income limit 2023. No, that's not what I want. I want tax limit. $160,200. So you're going to pay that. You're going to pay that Social Security tax rate, 6.2, up on your first $160,000 of income, which covers almost everybody in the United States, because like the top 1% is the threshold is like a little over $100,000. I think I might be wrong on that, because again, that number changes as the income changes. So it's of course subject to change, but the idea is like, well, we'll just remove that cap. So, the rich have to pay the 6.2 on everything. That's not going to get that far either. Because a lot of rich people don't earn regular income, so that they're not even subject to the income tax, because it's not payroll. It's a payroll tax on income tax. Yeah. And so if you make your money through investments, that's not a payroll, so that's not payroll taxed. And again, that's designed for a reason too, because you want capital investment in your economy. Some people feel that that's very, very unfair. Well, I think the income tax is very, very unfair in general. I'm not for a progressive tax system at all. I think it should be if it's going to be income, I don't think there should be an income tax. I think it should be all consumption tax. Like you get pissed off, the other side gets pissed off. I'm like, oh, this company didn't pay any income tax this year. It's like, well, because they had carryover losses from losing the entire industry, losing their ass during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. But like you get pissed off and be like, oh, they're taking advantage of these loopholes. Well, consumption tax, sales tax. But I'm not going to be in favor of any national consumption tax absent the removal of the 18th Amendment that did this income tax. Whatever amendment is, 16.
Yeah, it's up there. Yeah.
It's that era. Like you would have to repeal that amendment before I'd be on board with a consumption tax, because otherwise you will just end up with both.
Yeah. And for that to happen, it's virtually impossible.
That would never, ever, 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 ever happen. But like it is really the most fair tax.
Yeah. Sometime we'll have to get into, guys, what it would take to undo a constitutional amendment. And it's pretty much impossible. So
the only viable path would be a convention of the states.
Mm-hmm.
Like the idea of getting it through 2/3 of Congress with the president's signature, remarkably unlikely.
Mm-hmm.
It just isn't going to happen. So like we could talk about like what would I do, what would I wish for? Be like, well, that would be one. I'd repeal the income tax.
Mm-hmm.
Because what constitutional amendment, what positive amendment would I put in place? I guess the specific wording of it. The problem is now amendments are all going to be like 30 pages long because that's just how law works these days. Like you're not the 2-paragraph amendment days are long gone.
Mm-hmm.
I would like short of the other ones. I'd repeal the one I'd put in place is, I would make unconstitutional any form of direct payment to any citizen under any circumstance whatsoever.
Nice.
That would be the one sentence, like no condition whatsoever, period. There shall be zero wealth redistribution there'll be wealth redistribution of no kind. The only kind that will be allowed is the voluntary kind.
Mm-hmm. And it won't be regulated by the government either.
Correct. The halfway point to that would be anybody receiving direct benefits from the federal government is ineligible to vote.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you can only be a U.S. citizen if you are naturalized or you are born of parents who are already naturalized citizens. No, you happen to be across the line on a map, so you're a citizen anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Which was never the intent of that amendment, by the way. The idea that it was a post-Civil War Reconstruction amendment designed to make sure that the black people that were freed wouldn't be exempt from citizenship. It was not designed to be like, oh, you had birth on U.S. soil, so you're a citizen now. That was never the intent. Like if you look at all the text and all the conversation regarding that amendment, that was never the intent of that one. Was just simply like, oh, you crapped out a baby on U.S. soil, so your baby's now a citizen. That was never the intent of that law. But
your crotch goblin was spawned on U.S. soil.
Yeah, like your baby went plop on this side of the border, so it's a citizen now. That was never the intent. I mean, there's so many constitutional amendments, but I think the big one would be the zero redistribution, or if you're receiving direct benefits from the state, then you're exempt from voting.
Nice. Yeah, and that would offset, the buying votes.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Like if you want to be a ward of the state, if you're a ward of the state, then you're a ward and you're not a participant in the electoral process.
Mm-hmm. I like it.
And that goes for Social Security too.
Mm-hmm. It's a payment.
I'm sorry, you're getting a government benefit, like direct payment.
I'm sorry. That's great. Hey, do you know what a P90 is? Did you ever watch any Stargate SG-1?
No. My brother did, and I kind of watched a couple episodes here and there, but I never got into it.
I think I'm going to do a rewatch soon, but a P90 is a rifle. It's a Swiss-made, I believe, rifle. No, it's Belgian, I believe. And pretty cool. It looks space age. I think that's why they used it. But that gun is featured in this segment, the hot conservative chick of the night. So check this out. I found this, and I thought everyone would find it interesting. And Pac-Man, and I have that exact Pac-Man game, guys. So she's got a good trigger finger there.
Mm-hmm.
Fingers not on the trigger, has a bikini on, playing Pac-Man. You can't beat it. Oh, Timo knows it is Belgian. Belgium is the country.
You
Belgian
can't beat Pac-Man. It just keeps going and going and going.
Mm-hmm. Belgian is the demonym Timon, but Belgium is the name of the country. So yeah, P90, pretty cool. And what's cool about it is the barrel is like inset, right? So you don't wind up with this long ass barrel, yet you still have, you don't, let me reword that. You don't wind up with this long ass rifle, but you still have a barrel because it's like inset in the rest of the weapon, which is pretty cool.
I mean, it's no ZF1, but it's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I feel like playing some Pac-Man all of a sudden. But yeah, guys, we have to start wrapping it up because we've been going 3.5 hours.
3.5 hours. And
I
we
gotta
barely
go to
covered
work.
like all this shit that's been going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got to wake up in about. I can't do the maths. About 6 hours, 6.5 to go to bed. Blake says, I'm an amendment to B, and I'm hoping they ratify me. I'll crush all opposition to me, and I'll make Ted Kennedy pay. If he fights back, I'll say that he's gay. Nice.
He's kind of dead.
Oh man, we should do a whole stream on that piece of garbage. Here's what's great. Like, I don't know. I don't know
the
how
lion
this
of the
happened.
Senate.
I don't know how this happened, but so I don't know if I ever told you this, but the guys from Four Corners and a bunch of other people, we all came together originally like on these wrestling forums like 20 years ago. And then we had to move because we all got banned by the new owner. And then we went to another forum and another, and suddenly we're in a Facebook group when Facebook became a thing. In any event, I don't know how this happened, but we started up this thread where we're singing 1,000 bottles of beer on the wall about Ted Kennedy. And there were some great ones. Just, I can't think of all of them, but it was all the jokes you could imagine, like killing a girl in the car accident. And
yeah. Bridge
all that.
jokes.
Yeah.
Water jokes.
One of them was just like so many the beer on the wall, and it was just chowder. Because it's a Massachusetts thing. It's a masshole thing.
Nothing's good in Massachusetts.
My son told me that he's out of there now, and he doesn't want to look back. So
what a horrible state. I just there's nothing. I'm like, I don't like either coast, but if I had to choose, I would absolutely choose West Coast. Because like, I gotta be honest, like I can't stand East Coast accents. And the worst is fucking Boston, but
yeah. Hey Greg, let's go to the
worst is
bar.
Rosie
Let's
Perez.
go to the bar.
Bah, I'm gonna go bar and suck some cock.
No thanks.
No, the worst accent though is the Rosie Perez kind of accent that.
Oh my gosh.
Fucking Puerto Rican Bronx fucking accent. The fake accent that AOC puts on when she goes back to her district and starts talking.
Yeah,
South Coast.
Why not
absolutely.
South Coast? Why not South Coast?
South Coast would be absolutely the best choice. I would love to live on the Gulf Coast.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's the thing. Like the South, gets it for dumb guys and all that. I'll be honest. Like I can't think of anyone dumber than like the snap hat, leather jacket wearing like Brooklynite. like Rocky, you know what I mean? Like that to me is like dumber than the overall wearing guy from Alabama. I mean,
yeah, it's not really a fair stereotype, and I don't think it's accurate anymore. Like if you look at where manufacture growth and everything, like they didn't build Toyota plants in the Midwest. They built them in the South.
Mm-hmm. Or in the Northeast. Yeah.
Or in the Northeast. They don't build it because one, bad business climate, two, just, not the best place to put up shop or,
I
the
know
business
some people that worked in Detroit,
Ugh.
and they say that those like union employees are just like the worst, that work in all those auto manufacturer plants.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
But the Toyota ones, like in Texas and stuff, it's good work environment, and I think
Yeah, right to work
maybe it's
states.
Nissan, maybe it's not Toyota, or both, maybe in Texas. But yeah, I think they're building one in Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah,
Yeah, Tennessee, another good spot to put up shop. There's
except that Nashville is kind of like being Austinized, where it's becoming like a really liberal city. So
yes, that
pretty
is true.
sad to happen. Pretty sad.
Yeah, well, like the thing is like, and it's funny. People always talk about like blue state, red state, and they make comparisons and everything. It's like, well, look at the crime in this state. It's like even the red states have big blue cities. Almost all of them do. Austin certainly is a big blue city. Louisiana,
right.
New Orleans, pretty blue. Even for the longest time, Florida, Miami, pretty solidly blue. Although that changed the last election.
Birmingham,
yeah, like any state, Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Madison, blue. So blue that they turn the whole state. Although Green Bay has also turned blue, but the county Green Bay is in is still red. But yeah, every even red states, deep red states, have very blue cities, and what those states should do is try to destroy those cities, defund the fuck out of them.
You're a threat to democracy.
I am a threat to democracy. I'm a threat to every blue city. I'd pave them all over.
Hey, would you get the kill tank, or what the hell was
the killdozer? Killdozer. Yeah.
What's amazing is he didn't kill anyone. That's what's funny about the name of that.
I don't know how he didn't, because I seen the video and everything. It'd be like, man, like very fortunate that just one person in one of those buildings easily got killed.
Well, and that was a long time ago, and he had like all these exterior mounted cameras, and he had like bulletproof glass around the cameras. Like, what the hell, man?
Yeah, this guy was committed to his cause. I mean, let me tell you. He made the police look like damn fools.
Yeah.
The problem with that, though, is you get guys that do that shit, and then the police departments are justified for practically militarizing. And it's funny. Like, I know the conservatives, and I know we're trying to end the show, but like conservatives are supposed to be like the big, rah thin blue line,
thin blue line.
Yeah. The problem with that is like, look, there's a reason why the country was set up in a way that we weren't supposed to have a standing army policing its citizens, but just calling them the police department, but arming them like the military is kind of the same thing.
Right.
And I get that they need to have tactical gear to deal with some of the people that they deal with, but like, wow, I think we've gone a little far.
No, but here's the thing. I've been really reading a lot of Western magazines, especially True West, because it's a pretty based magazine. A lot of those Western magazines are liberal garbage, but it talks so much about how posses are formed and all that stuff, and sometimes they kind of went awry. But when that happened, like a judge would like get them prosecuted, right, and get them in trouble, and then that discouraged posses from doing that type of stuff. But guess what? That also happens with law enforcement departments too. Look at the Rampart Division in LAPD. That's what the Shield is based on. Like, that was real stuff where they were colluding, right, with the criminals that they were fighting. So it's going to happen anyway. So why make it a government funded, militarily armed, not just with weapons, but high powered vehicles? Like LAPD started getting tanks and stuff to fight like the gang members in the 80s and stuff. Like, if you watch what's the NWA movie called, Straight Outta Compton and stuff, like they actually had that equipment that they used in the movie.
Yeah, they all have. A lot of them now have armored personnel carriers.
Go back to the pandemic. Somewhere up north, maybe in Chicago, it showed video of people on their porch, like, what's going on? And then this canister's fired at the people on the porch for opening their door. I mean, come on, guys. Yeah, we got to have a whole stream on that. Didn't we already have a stream on that?
I'm sure we probably touched on the subject, but it keeps coming up more and more. And I think I think it's bad for conservatives to reflexively just automatically defend something. And God, we are so guilty of this on the right all the time. It's like, well, if the left doesn't like something, then we should like it. You know, you saw that with what's his name, the piece of shit that got arrested in Romania. That dumb braggart, alpha man, fucking ex MMA fighter.
Andrew something.
Andrew Taint.
Yeah.
Like that guy, no, I'm sorry, I'm not going to defend him. He's
or I got one for you. I got one custom made for you. Like, oh no, guess what? The liberals hate J.K. Rowling. Therefore, I love Harry Potter.
Oh, that's something I wanted to cover on spacing.
Okay.
Because you got a lot of people standing for that fucking video game right now, and it's driving me goddamn crazy.
What? I don't know what you're talking about.
There's a new Hogwarts game.
DM it to me.
Yeah, I'll explain it later. But yeah, this idea is well, they don't like it, so we got to defend it. And be like, no, we need to defend things that are worthy of defending. And there's other things that I think that we should just jump on board for the sake of destroying the thing. Oh, the left is going to go after this. Let's jump on board and parrot it, and let's cancel the fucking thing.
Yeah.
Because they're not on our side, guys, and they're never going to be on our side. And just what have they done to earn our defense? In principle, yes, what's happening then to them is bullshit and wrong, but why should I lift a finger to help them when they fucking hate my guts? And they'll stomp on my guts to save their own ass at any moment. So when these companies get screwed over, or they get a taste of their own medicine, I'm not fucking defending them. I think we should join it. I think we should be like, yes, absolutely. Andor is racist. Clone Wars is racist. Bad Batch is racist. They're whitewashing the clones. It's terrible. Cancel Star Wars. We shouldn't defend that shit. We should jump on. We should jump on board and be like, yeah, cancel it. Not because they're right, but because fuck the people running Star Wars. No, fuck, I'm not going to defend them for nothing. Why? They'd kill me in a second. This idea that we got to automatically defend things because of who's attacking them. And, that goes for celebrities and other things too. It'd be like, no, I'm sorry.
Well, we are going to talk about the whitewashing Friday night, and Raging Rhino is supposed to join us for a bit. So he's watching the show for some reason. Don't know why. We've got to get him.
I didn't see his reviews yet. I haven't looked at it.
Of that habit, but yeah,
I just hate the entire concept of Bad Batch. I have no desire to even learn anything about it, really.
Yeah.
But if the liberals are saying that Star Wars is racist, I'm going to agree, and I'm going to call for Star Wars to be canceled.
Light the match. But yeah, we really got to run, guys. We've really got to run. 3 hours, 40 minutes. Greg, thanks for being here. The procurator of justice, and everyone else. We've had one man show, and we've had Jock Nerdy showed up, and Eclay was here. Melissa was here. Yeah, Small Time Republic. And we've had some lurkers and stuff. And of course, Liquid Blake's been in the chat. So guys, we're going to do these as often as we can. I don't want to say there's a cadence yet, but maybe at some point we'll say, hey, they're twice a month or something like that. So there's a lot to talk about, but there's only a finite amount of time to talk about it. So we'll do our best. But again, thanks for being here, and stay tuned for the link to the spacing in the next couple of days. Friday night, as always, 9:45 Central Time. Be there, and we are getting the hell up on out of here. Have a good night.
Is that legal?
I will make it legal.
Where do you get this bureaucratic bull?
You have all the character references of a politician.
Intelligence has nothing to do with politics.
This president is not above the law.
If the dirty air don't get you, the politicians will.
The last remnants of the old republic have been swept away.
These orders have forced us to declare independence.